And at 10, Earth NR. On Earth NR, Johann Schmidt is the illegitimate son of Adolf. You know the one, who trained him to be one of his best generals. However, the man known as the Red Skull was considered dangerous even to him being Adolf. So when he tried to have him assassinated, the Red Skull retaliated by killing him in 1951. Red Skull then became the leader of the fascist regime until his death in 1984 at the hands of Punished Snake. Earth NR is also certainly an interesting Earth, since Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, air quotes, is the son of Nora Kramir and Nar-Vell, Kryptonian scientists that worked alongside the parents of Superman and are referred to as Kree, which is a slang term for Kryptonian. So apparently, some of these characters are combinations of DC heroes as well as Marvel heroes, but like they're not a part of the separate amalgam universe. I don't know, that was interesting to me.
Number 9. Cynthia Sin Schmidt. Sin is the daughter of Red Skull, who for a time also adopted her father's mantle. She isn't an alternate in the way of being from an alternate reality, but she is an alternate version of the Red Skull mantle. Her mother was a nameless washerwoman whom Red Skull had really no ties to himself, but simply used in an attempt to get an heir. Disappointed when the child that they bore was born a girl. When she first rose to prominence, she greatly resembled her father's appearance, also boasting of a skeletal looking Red Skull face herself, which she actually got as a result of a fight with Bucky Barnes. During the Fear Itself story arc, she became one of the Serpent's chosen warriors, Scotty. Since then, however, her appearance has changed in the comics to the point that those who remember her from Fear Itself might not even recognize her anymore, although this was her original appearance in the sense of what she originally looked like. Cynthia now goes by the mantle of Sin and is looking much less frightening currently in comic continuity. Still, I don't think she's someone you would want to mess with, hence why she makes her cut. Number 8. Ultron. While Thanos may not have seen this coming in the What If Disney Plus streaming animated series episode, if he had, he likely would have been wise enough to have actually been afraid of Ultron. Ultron here is nuts. Here Ultron ends up becoming all-powerful after Thanos arrives on an already decimated Earth, because in this reality Ultron actually won. Thanos, having the rest of the Infinity Stones at this point, does not prove powerful enough to stop this alternate Ultron, who actually kills him just using the Mind Stone alone and takes the rest of the Infinity Stones for himself. Number 7. Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is someone most people might underestimate in the world of comics. This is because he kinda has a ridiculous look in terms of his character design, and probably also because he's known for floating around in kinda like an invisible space chair. It's not the easiest look to adapt to a modern setting and have it feel, you know, anything but ridiculous. It just kind of, it's a look. However, Kang is also a time-traveling villain and the master of time. We have seen both Thanos and Kang reveal that each is intimidated at times by the other. And I know some people are probably gonna be like, but Amanda, what about the time Kang was like, I literally have been avoiding you in like every timeline? Well, there's another alternate reality where something different happens, okay? While Thanos might pack more of a physical punch, Kang could also probably just erase Thanos from existence if he really wanted to. And in an alternate reality at least, he has defeated Thanos using his power over time to basically turn him to dust. So that's also happened. Really, it could go either way. I'm very interested to see if there will be any interaction between these characters in the MCU. I know Thanos is gone, but what if he came back? I don't know. Number 6. Death. Not really a villain per se, though some could see her as such. Death is still definitely an antagonist at the very least. She is the embodiment of death, and I would say that Thanos both respects and fears her during his time pining after her. He is afraid of being rejected by her, that's for sure. Thanos has a complex relationship with death, being an agent of death as someone who also happens to be in love with it, and the feminine entity who embodies it. Thanos at one point pleaded with Death to stay with him after she left him in essence at the altar, following their fight in an alternate universe where King Thanos, as he had become, had pretty much destroyed all life in existence for her. But you know, still not good enough, Thanos. You gotta earn it. You gotta destroy all life, not almost all. Number 5. Magus. Adam Warlock and Thanos have been at each other's throats for years in the comics, but with Adam Warlock being a hero, Thanos wouldn't be particularly afraid of him, I'd say. In fact, the two have also teamed up together when they've needed to, so they fought each other, but they've also worked together before, chiefly against the man they are both afraid of, Adam Warlock's evil counterpart, his evil version, Magus, who actually is like the dark side of his soul made manifest. Magus was actually created to be the champion of life, in contrast to Thanos, who is the champion of death, and as such the two have been sworn enemies since Magus's creation. He is meant to oppose Thanos, which he has attempted to do multiple times to varying success. At one point he demonstrated that he was an even match for Thanos when he got his hands on the Infinity Gauntlet, attempting to use it to bend and shape reality to his own whim. Didn't work out in the end, but hey, you know, he tried. Number 4. Dr. Doom. Well, really God Emperor Doom, but still. Thanos also wasn't really intimidated by this version of Doom, but he should have been. Doom might seem like just a Terran with a big brain and some magic tricks in comparison to Thanos being a cosmic tyrant, but Doom is not to be trifled with, especially when he wields the powers of the Beyonder. Thanos attempted to fight Doom without much fear, and Doom responded by literally obliterating him, turning him to dust and bones with one mighty punch. And you might be wondering if this was some alternate warped Thanos, but no, it wasn't really. This was Thanos of the Black Cabal, who had preserved himself along with his teammates in a life raft so they weren't altered at all during the creation of Doom's battle world in Secret Wars. Now granted, yes, Doom was augmented in terms of his power, but still, if Thanos remembered this moment, I'm sure he'd at least have a bit of fear when facing Doom in the future, because that's pretty wild. Number 3. Rot. Rot was the child of Thanos and Death that came to be after Thanos died, and in his death, he merged with the entity of death. Rot as such was not really a person or corporeal being, but more of an abstract entity made manifest. Rot's power was so great for death and destruction that Death and Thanos themselves were actually forced to confront it, using their power to rip it asunder, when nothing else seemed to be able to harm it. Number 2. The Many-Angled Ones. What is a fate worse than death for Thanos? How about a fate where life and creation win, where death is defeated so all that is left is untamed, uncontrolled, wild life? That is basically what the Cancerverse is. Although it doesn't have the most appealing name, the Cancerverse is actually known as such thanks to the fact that it came into existence after the original Captain Marvel of an alternate world made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones to rid him of his cancer, basically by defeating death. However, without death to keep it in check, life became twisted and corrupted by how rampant it was. And the Many-Angled Ones were also now able to enter that reality, corrupting it further as they were basically eldritch gods. At one point, the Cancerverse plans to take over the whole multiverse, invading various other universes and sitting on the edge of reality, threatening to bleed into other worlds. Fortunately, Thanos returns to life and ends up manipulating Captain Marvel basically into killing him in the Thanos Imperative, with Marvel making an exception to the rule that nothing can die in their universe for Thanos, because he's like, you are so annoying, you gotta go. As such, because this Thanos is actually of Earth 616, his version of death is able to appear in the Cancerverse when he dies and allows it to be defeated basically. But even though this works to get to this point, it takes a lot of courage for Thanos, who is actually afraid of joining in the fight against the Cancerverse initially due to the absence of death in that world, which makes sense. I mean, he's kinda all about death, so I'd be pretty nervous about that too. Number 1. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and he definitely feared him because he literally returned to Earth to try and hunt Thane down and destroy him as a result of Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's afraid that Thane will basically rise up and overtake him and basically end up being a better Thanos, I think. But in the end, this wasn't something that Thanos had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after Thane became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to defeat him. And this was also at a point when Thanos himself seemed to be dying at this time in the comics. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life. Or, you know, at least until some writer remembers, oh yeah, he's still down in that God Quarry, and decides to get him out of there. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son. He had a Death Touch ability that, while untamed, could kill anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which sounds actually worse than dying to me. Number 10. Uranos. While Thanos didn't outwardly appear to be nervous or afraid around his great uncle Uranos in the recent Eternals comic series, or at least in the one-shot issue that's sort of tied into Eternals the heretic, I'm not fully convinced that this was actually true. In fact, I might even think that Thanos was perhaps bluffing. This is because Uranos is known to be even more of a killer than his great nephew. Even if it didn't appear as though Thanos was affected by this knowledge, we already know from other experiences that Thanos does not like to have his purpose undermined in this way. He likes to be the best and greatest agent of death, and Uranos, if not locked up, compete with him for that title. Which likely means that Thanos, if Uranos were fully unleashed, would be afraid and intimidated by him, probably seeking to destroy him eventually. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love this video, if you love when we talk about Thanos, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Mephisto. While in Infinity Gauntlet, it seems as though Thanos is actually playing Mephisto for a fool, making him in essence behave like a servant to him. In reality, it kinda seems more likely that Mephisto, in awe of Thanos' power, is actually along for the ride and looking for ways to manipulate him. This wouldn't be the first time Mephisto would do something like this in Thanos' life either. It is also implied in issue number 38 of the current Avengers run that Mephisto actually manipulated Thanos in his past as well, possibly even having a hand in encouraging Kid Thanos to join up with the Masters of Evil and take on the prehistoric Avengers. Also, Mephisto, or the collection of Mephistos, could later make a deal with them. Who knows? I personally think, while Thanos might not see the threat that Mephisto is as a villain, that Thanos could fear and perhaps in the future will fear him when he realizes just how much Mephisto may have been manipulating him this whole time. After all, it was actually Mephisto in Infinity Gauntlet that kind of first helped plant the idea of Thanos snapping. Seriously, go back and read that issue, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Number 8. Zsasz. Victor Zsasz has a character trait that a few others on this list possess. He's just completely and utterly insane. Zsasz scares Batman for one main reason. Whenever he is not locked up, it's almost guaranteed that lives will come to an end. Which just ups the ante because every escape of this killer becomes a race against the clock for Batman. He needs to bring him down fast before he adds another scar to his body. Every single one of those scars signifies a failure for Batman. Zsasz is a man with absolutely no form of pity or morals, and he will never stop unless he passes away, but we know Batman will never do that. In an alternate story, Injustice, Zsasz is even responsible for the passing of Alfred Pennyworth, which was not supposed to happen, but because Zsasz is Zsasz, it did. Number 7. Thomas Wayne Batman. Other versions of Batman always have the potential to be a scary thought for our Batman, or anyone, really. But when that version of Batman is Bruce Wayne's own father, who completely destroys him emotionally, teams up with Bane, and is trying to stop Batman being Batman so he can have a normal life, it's an incredibly interesting idea for a character, honestly. But with all the daddy issues Batman has, for his alternate reality father to be so twisted and brutal has got to be a terrifying thought. But what did Thomas do that was so bad? Well, let me tell you. Alongside Bane, he ruined Batman and Catwoman's wedding, causing her to leave him at the altar, nearly had Batman send Mr. Freeze to the afterlife for a crime he did not commit, kidnapped Damian Wayne, hired the KG Beast to take out Dick Grayson, he had Bane put Alfred Pennyworth in the ground, then Thomas incapacitated Bruce with fear toxin and kidnapped him. He dug up the coffin of Martha Wayne, wishing to use the Lazarus Pit to resurrect Martha so that they could all be a happy family again. He went more than a little overboard is what I'm saying. Number 6. The Batman Who Laughs. Another version of Batman, only this time it's basically the ultimate evil version of himself. A Jokerized Bruce Wayne. He is just absolutely awful. He has all the smarts and skill of Batman himself, but the completely bonkers unpredictability of Joker. And this combo causes the Batman Who Laughs to become one of the biggest threats to the entire multiverse. Now, being a Jokerized Bruce Wayne, he has a few differences to the man himself. He's thinner and faster, but physically weaker. Unfortunately, physicality in battle with this guy doesn't really matter. He's got backup in the form of his Dark Knights, and he has backup plans on top of backup plans as any Batman worth his salt would have. This guy put his consciousness into a Batman with the power of Dr. Manhattan and destroyed Perpetua, the first creator of the multiverse and the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger. Number 5. Pig. Professor Pig is a villain that came to be during a time when Batman stories were becoming incredibly dark, and Pig himself has to be one of the darkest villains of that era. His methods completely disgust the Dark Knight. He looks like a character straight out of a horror or slasher movie, and his obsession with physical perfection, like in the myth of Pygmalion, became part of the reason he surgically mutilates his victims, turning them into his mind-controlled servants called Dolotrons. If his crimes weren't horrifying enough, then just look at him. Yeah. Get out of my nightmares, thank you. Bye. Number 4, Scarecrow. With Scarecrow, fear is the name of the game. I don't believe Batman is actually scared of Scarecrow himself, but Scarecrow has used his fear toxin to debilitate and send the Dark Knight running on multiple occasions, and that makes him a unique foe that puts Batman in a position he doesn't often find himself in. Batman is a physical powerhouse with a mind that is exceedingly sharp, but his mind is also partially his biggest weakness because he has some serious psychological issues, and Scarecrow's whole shtick is manipulating that kind of thing. When Scarecrow pops up on the scene, the Dark Knight knows that something terrifying is coming his way. Number 3, the Court of Owls. Probably the oldest, most secretive, and most profitable group in Gotham City's underworld. When Bruce Wayne became a threat to them, they put Batman through one hell of a psychological ringer, and possibly one of the darkest Batman stories ever. He gets trapped in a huge Court of Owls maze underneath Gotham City, and trying to make his way through it, Batman goes through physical and psychological tests that nearly break the Dark Knight. But the court has so many feathers in all areas of Gotham and Bruce Wayne's own life. They may have even had a hand in the passing of his parents. Possibly. And we haven't even started talking about the Talons, a group of brainwashed and undead robot-like assassins. The combo of psychological warfare and the deadly Talons nearly brought Bruce Wayne to the pearly gates. Number 2, Bane. His name says it all, as Bane has been the bane of Batman on multiple occasions. The Bane we saw in the Dark Knight Rises movie was fantastic, and he absolutely instilled fear in Batman, but the comic version of that same story goes to a whole other level. With his master plan being even more well thought out and damaging to Batman, he unleashed Arkham Asylum on Gotham, putting Batman on the ropes as he has to chase down all the escaped criminals. Bane studied Batman. He utilizes his own weaknesses and completely destroys Batman, breaking his back in one of the most infamous comic book moments ever. More recently though, Bane brought Batman even lower than when he broke his spine because he broke Bruce's heart by snapping the neck of Alfred Pennyworth. Any battle Batman has fought against Bane has been with the help of his allies, and that's because Batman knows that he can't take on Bane alone. Number 1, the Joker. I think if there is one person who scares Batman more than anyone, it's gotta be the Joker. They have had such a long and complex history with each other, and I think because of that, and the Joker's obsession with the Bat, Joker knows all the ways to mess with Batman, and he's constantly coming up with new ones. He will go after anyone to get at Batman, and he will go through anyone just for the fun of it. He's unpredictable. Batman never knows for sure where he will strike and what he will do unless the Joker wants Batman to know. Everything is a game that he knows the rules to. The other thing about Joker is that he would never actually take the Dark Knight's life. In fact, I feel like he would probably destroy anyone who tries to. This just makes him more terrifying as he simply wants to be a constant cause of fear and anxiety for the Dark Knight, and he is.
In at 10, Hyena. Hyena, first introduced in Legends of the Dark Claw #1 from 1996, is a combination of DC's The Joker and Marvel's Sabretooth. He is the archenemy of Darkclaw, a combination of DC's Batman and Marvel's Wolverine. His real name is Creed Harley Quinn. The Canadian government initiated the Weapon X project. Logan and Quinn of the RCAF were both accepted as candidates for the project, along with 4 other volunteers. Logan's latent metamutant healing factor kicks in, which allows him to survive the adamantium crafting process, and Creed survives as well, but becomes a remorseless killing machine. Exactly what the project was hoping for. Creed's sanity does not fare as well, and he eventually goes rogue, because of course he's going to. And Indestructible, known as Adamantium, was also bonded to Creed's skeleton as well as Logan's, and he was given claws made of the same substance. Unlike Darkclaw, however, Creed was physically deformed as a result of the experiment and went insane. Project X also triggered metamutant abilities in Creed, who became known as Hyena. Hyena, also known as the Cackling Canine, will not stop his maniacal grinning until his arch nemesis Darkclaw is destroyed. He also has a gang called the Pack, which is actually kinda cute, but still terrifying. And at 9, Martha Wayne. When Barry Allen altered the timeline so that his mother lived, a lot changed, along with Martha Wayne. She had initially been the mother to Bruce Wayne, who would have become Batman when she was killed in the alleyway by Joe Chill, but Barry's mom surviving somehow resulted in her and her husband, Thomas Wayne, surviving Joe Chill's fateful ambush, but their son dying as a result. Butterfly effect, I guess. This ultimately broke her, driving her completely insane from grief and having her adopt the identity of the Joker, as well as committing various crimes in Gotham, also resulting in Thomas becoming a vigilante known as Batman in an attempt to stop her. By the time of the Flashpoint saga, she had kidnapped the twin sons of Harvey Dent without leaving a ransom note, and then, at her hideout in Wayne Manor, manipulated Commissioner Gordon into shooting the daughter by dressing her up in a Joker outfit, and then murdered the Commissioner. Eventually, Batman arrived, and she had proceeded to bludgeon her former husband with a hammer, an action that Batman willingly endured for a chance at getting a glimpse of the remaining psyche of his former wife. Ultimately, he managed to temporarily get through to her and revealed that they may have a chance of actually undoing the events that happened, although it may result in her deaths. She accepted though, because she wanted her son to live, but apparently not become Batman. In at 8, Earth 92-131. Earth 92131, also known as the Spider-Man 90s animated universe, Red Skull was obsessed with creating and controlling a doomsday weapon that he had a German scientist build for him under New York City. After numerous battles with Captain America and the 6 American warriors, he and Cap became trapped in a vortex for 50 years. After those 50 years, the Red Skull's son, Reichenwald Kragoff, freed him from the vortex, and they found the doomsday weapon and used it on Reinhold, which made him become Electro. After Electro betrayed the Red Skull, he tricked Spider-Man and Captain America into fixing the vortex in order to capture Electro. And after a battle, both Cap and the Skull were trapped in the vortex yet again. But he was later freed by the Beyonder to be a part of the Secret Wars. He recruited Alistair Smythe and Dr. Octopus to help him in his bid to conquer Battle World, and he absolutely decimated the planet. So yeah, I mean, he's a pretty bad dude. He was also returned to Earth by Doctor Doom with no memory of the events when Doom had stole the Beyonder's powers, but that means that he was free on Earth, which the animation couldn't continue to look into because it ended, unfortunately, like 3 episodes later. Anyway, he was also the adopted father of Chameleon, and then he turned his biological son into Electro, so that's some pretty serious villain juice, especially for an animated Saturday cartoon villain.
Number 7. Golden Skull. Golden Skull is from the alternate future of Earth 15061. His true identity remains unknown, although it was rumored that he was the son of another alternate Red Skull known as the Green Skull. If this is true, it's believed that he became the Golden Skull out of rebellion against his father and everything that he believed in. Golden Skull was known for being a recurring enemy and villain to Daniel Cage, the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, and the all-grown-up alternate future version of Captain America. As his name implies, Golden Skull himself was obsessed with wealth, acting like the most capitalist version of the Red Skull. At one time, he traveled to the past, where his plan was actually to take control of the entirety of Earth's economy. Pretty big plan.
And at 6, A New Future. On Earth 71500, Johann Schmidt, also known as the Red Skull, was at some point the leader of Hydra, obviously, but after Cap reached Hydra's headquarters and destroyed it, the two fought hard and they were both knocked out and frozen by Hydra. However, Natalia Romanova, the Black Widow of this reality, is also a member of the Avengers and Hydra. Natalia fought along with the other members of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers against Nathaniel Von Doom and his army, but she was badly injured by Sabretooth and Juggernaut. She recovered from this injury at a time where the current president was resigning and a new president was needed. So she went to the secret Hydra base where both Captain America and the Red Skull were kept frozen, and she woke up Red Skull with a plan that she had managed to create when the current president resigned. And since Red Skull wanted to win the election, he disguised himself as Captain America. Yeah, you heard that right. On Earth 71500, Captain America is actually the Red Skull and started running for president under the guise of Captain America, someone that every American could trust. Yeah, I'm sure you can figure out how that turned out.
Number 5. White Skull. There have actually been a few White Skulls, but for the purpose of this list, I'll be talking about Colonel Bucky Barnes from the alternate reality of Earth 717. In this reality, we learn of what would happen if Captain America had lived during the American Civil War. Bucky himself becomes a villain in this universe, being a corrupt leader of the Union Red Legs Regiment, where soldier Stephen Rogers served. While tracking down Stephen, Buck interrupts an indigenous ritual meant to heal and transform Stephen Rogers, Avengers. As a result, the skin on Colonel Barnes' face was burned off, revealing his white skull underneath, which is supposed to be symbolism, I think, for the fact that he's racist. Surviving the incident, Colonel Barnes would become the White Skull, the sworn enemy of Stephen Rogers' Captain America.
In it for Captain Skull. Imagine a Captain America but a fascist version. And not one that secretly works for Hydra, but literally one that is branded with fascist symbols and a black, white, and red color scheme instead of the classic all-American red, white, and blue. That's basically what Captain Skull is from Earth 613. This guy is literally just Captain Fascism, and that certainly seems scary to me. In fact, here's a quote from a version of Red Skull. I don't think it's this version, but it's still a quote nonetheless. "Ah, my dear Captain, now you see who is stronger of us both. It is too bad that a symbol of freedom had to perish to see it. It is also too bad that I was insincere in that sentiment." Cause like, okay, so really that could just be a quote from the normal Red Skull, but hey, it fits this version well. While not much is known about this version of the character, it's certainly something that I personally believe that we should be afraid of.
Number 3. Ultimate Red Skull. In the reality of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate Universe, Red Skull is actually the son of Captain America, Stephen Rogers, and his then girlfriend Gail Richards. While Captain America went MIA and was later declared dead, Gail was encouraged by the military to give up their baby and would end up marrying Stephen's best friend Bucky, after Stephen went missing, obviously. Gail and Stephen's child would be raised by the government and the military, who planned to have him become the new Captain America eventually. Unfortunately, it turns out that raising a baby in a military base to become his long-gone heroic father maybe isn't such a great idea. At the age of 17, the young man escaped and rebelled against his father's image, took a knife and cut the skin from his face, becoming the brilliant and evil villain known as the Red Skull. The really tragic thing is that Red Skull, while acquiring the Cosmic Cube and being captured before he could use it in this reality, revealed that the only reason that he'd wanted it to begin with was so that he could turn back time and prevent his father from being lost in the war, allowing him to grow up with a family and have a chance at a normal life with both his parents present. Not only is Red Skull of the Ultimate Universe terrifying, but he's also quite tragic as well.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Green Skull. Green Skull, aka Lex Luthor, is the amalgam of Marvel Comics Red Skull and DC Comics Lex Luthor. I mean, like, I'm guessing you could probably figure that based on his name and the title of this list. In the 1940s, Lex Luthor is a renowned entrepreneur and philanthropist who resides in Metropolis. He was married to Lois Lane, a war correspondent whom he met at a charity ball. Widely considered to be a model citizen and contributor to society, Luthor is also personal friends with high-ranking political figures such as Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt. Only Super Soldier, a World War II era superhero created by the US government, sees through his facade and knows that Luthor is actually a corrupt war profiteer who is aiding the fascist party in an effort to prolong the war. While looking into the secret government project that created Super Soldier, Luthor learns of an alien craft that landed in Kansas and carried a radioactive ore known as Green K, or the Kansas Load. I guess you can see where this is going. It's fucking kryptonite. In 1938, he arranged for fascist scientists to steal the ship and its cargo for him. Observing that the green meteorite weakens Super Soldier, Luthor creates a serum from it, which he then promptly injects himself with. The result greatly extends his own lifespan, but inadvertently turns him into the Green Skull. So in essence, he tried to make himself walking kryptonite and got boned because of it. No pun intended, because you know, he's the skull. Skull is a bone. He got boned.
Number 1. Red Onslaught. Red Onslaught might seem like he's part of the main continuity for the character, and well, I mean, he sort of is, but even he is not the original Red Skull, as the original Johann Schmidt died long ago. Instead, Red Onslaught was actually born out of a clone version of the original Red Skull. So many clones, so little time. So even before he became Red Onslaught, he was technically an alternate version of sorts. This clone of Red Skull would go on to steal Professor X's brain after he was killed by Cyclops in Avengers vs. X-Men. This would begin his journey towards becoming Red Onslaught, where Red Skull would then become merged with Onslaught via Professor X's brain. This basically all came about because Red Skull turned Genosha into a place where he enslaved and abducted both Inhumans and mutants. This obviously provoked Magneto, who attempted to kill Red Skull, but instead awoke a more powerful persona residing within him, Onslaught, thereby creating Red Onslaught. In order to defeat this devastating and deadly form, Scarlet Witch then cast a spell attempting to reverse the alignment of Red Onslaught, which worked, but kinda accidentally resulted in the Axis event, where various heroes and villains had their alignments flipped. So, you know, solve one problem, create a bunch more. It's kinda how Wanda does, unfortunately.
And at 10, Earth X. We already know that Ultron is a powerful villain, and the fact that he can basically infinitely resurrect himself because, he's a robot is already damn horrifying. Now imagine the Absorbing Man, who uses his absorption abilities to become Ultron, taking the intelligence and processing power of an AI hellbent on destruction, and then using it to become the Avengers' ultimate foe. Well, that's what happened to Ultron on Earth X, also known as Earth 9997. Absorbing Man claimed Ultron's powers, which I wouldn't even think was possible since he doesn't have powers and is instead a robot with AI, but he does it and somehow also gains his processing power, which is already terrifying for a robot, but like, a human with that kind of functionality is absolutely monstrous, but nothing compared to what's coming. And at 9, Earth 10071. On Earth 10071, this version of Ultron isn't known as Ultron 9 or anything like that. Instead, this version is simply Ultron, because at this point he's risen to the peak of his powers and subjugated the human race, which obviously fought back, but after destroying all of the human resistance, Ultron reigns supreme over the Earth, because of course he did. He was confronted by Kang the Conqueror though, who relished in the challenge of confronting the most powerful Ultron in recorded history. But Kang failed to defeat Ultron, and returned time and time again with new allies to overwhelm the robot overlord. Kang's repeated abuse of the time stream actually ended up causing it to fracture altogether, threatening reality as we know it. A version of Ultron who can beat up Kang the Conqueror multiple times, even when he brings allies, dude, that's nothing to mess with. Like, that's one of the most terrifying concepts I've heard, and not to mention what this guy looks like. He's an absolute beast! This man does not miss out on the gains. He has spikes going across every appendage on his body. It's f***ing nuts.
Number 8, Supergiant. Although the other members of the Black Order made an appearance in the MCU, one member was unfortunately shafted, and that is none other than Supergiant, the mentally unstable omnipath and telepathic parasite who seeks out intellect and devours it. In the comics, Supergiant had absolutely no issues with taking out the Jean Grey School and the X-Men associated with it. Later on, when the Black Order seized Wakanda, Supergiant was left in control of Black Bolt, whom she would mentally order to activate the bombs the Illuminati hid in Wakanda's necropolis. Upon activating the bomb, Supergiant was faced by Maximus, who had the trigger, and Maximus triggered the bomb, but also used Lockjaw to transport Supergiant along with the bomb to a distant uninhabited planet where she perished in the explosion of the bomb, although she did later return as a mental projection and even attempted to take over the body of Captain Glory so she could continue wreaking havoc on the world. Thankfully though, she was eventually taken out for good by the Lethal Legion while trying to take over Thor's mind. Check her out for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2013's Infinity, number 1. Number 7, Kull Borson. Born the older brother of Odin, Kull Borson, aka Serpent, is the god of fear in the Asgardian world. He possesses all the conventional attributes of an Asgardian god. However, as the son of war, many of these attributes are significantly better than those possessed by the majority of his race. He possesses enough superhuman strength to shatter Captain America's shield with his bare hands, has the ability to manipulate magic as he's able to teletransport, revive the dead, and transform himself into a giant serpent. And as the god of fear, he could consume the fear of other people to empower himself, making him stronger and even younger in the process. During the Fear Itself storyline, Kull created and gathered his Worthy in order to spread chaos across the entire world. This group being made up of Juggernaut as Kurth, Breaker of Stone, Hulk as Null, Breaker of Worlds, Atuma as Nurkod, Breaker of Oceans, Titania as Skirn, Breaker of Men, Grey Gargoyle as Mok, Breaker of Faith, Absorbing Man as Greythoth, Breaker of Wills, and Thing as Angrier, Breaker of Souls. Thor was eventually able to kill him in the storyline after some intense battles, but not without losing his own life in the process. Obviously though, both characters do come back to life just a little bit later on. However, Kull meets his permanent end in 2019's Thor Volume 5 number 13. Want to know what led up to that point? Well, check out this whole story for yourself, starting with 2011's Fear Itself, number 1.
Number 6, the Devastator. The Devastator is another twisted version of Bruce Wayne who was pushed too far. For mysterious reasons that remain unknown, the Superman of the Devastator's dark universe randomly underwent a change that caused him to go on a full-out rampage, killing everyone. Batman was one of the last few left to try and stop him, attempting to do so with a kryptonite spear. After Superman blasts off Batman's arm, however, he is driven to desperate measures. Batman is forced to activate his own version of the Doomsday virus, which takes over his body and transforms him into a doomsday-like creature, becoming the Devastator. Although he fails in saving his world, he succeeds in killing the Superman of his universe, before heading out to try and save other alternate Earths by infecting them with the virus in order to protect them from their world Superman. Although, they never really asked for that, so it's pretty horrifying. Number 5. Infinite Crisis. In the dark multiverse, Ted Kord is not killed by Maxwell Lord. Instead, Ted pretends to agree to join Lord in cleaning house when it comes to his plans for Checkmate, but he betrays Lord and kills him. Brother Eye threatens to push on with the OMAC project, but Kord offers that he could help to guide Brother Eye and take Maxwell Lord's place, help Brother Eye save and protect the planet as Lord had promised Brother would. Ted ends up attempting to recruit Booster Gold to help him with Brother Eye, but Booster isn't so sure about his friend's plan. In the end, he teams up with Superboy Prime, who has been plotting with Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 to create a perfect world in the main continuity, but Luthor betrays him. Superboy and Blue Beetle, who's now directly connected to the Brother Eye, end up teaming up. They end up attempting to take out 50% of Earth's superhero population as recommended by Brother Eye, but in the end they're forced to eliminate or assimilate all of the superhero populace, who obviously are like, no, you can't just kill us, with Ted Kord sacrificing his humanity in order to completely demolish all of that superhero threat. Number 4. The Murder Machine. After the death of Alfred, Batman in his grief seeks to create an AI in Alfred's image and employs the help of Cyborg. Bruce calls the project the Alfred Protocol. Alfred Protocol is also programmed to act as Bruce's infallible bodyguard, and it's this programming which causes everything to go sideways. The Alfred Protocol spreads, taking out every villain, every criminal he deems a threat to Bruce Wayne's life. However, it doesn't end there. The Alfred Protocol also realizes in order to protect Bruce, it also needs to change him, protect him from himself and his emotions by eradicating them, starting with his fear. This change infects and transforms Batman into a cyborg version of himself known as the Murder Machine, who then goes about killing everyone, determining that everyone and his attachment to them is a weakness. Number 3. The Batman Who Laughs. This dark multiverse story was so terrifying it got its own series. The Batman Who Laughs actually got a miniseries to explain just how his story went down. By now we all should mostly know it, but if you haven't read it, it's chilling and thrilling and it's definitely worth a read. In the story, it's explained how Batman became corrupted by Joker venom when he ended up losing control and killing the Joker, triggered by being forced to watch the Joker kill children's parents in front of them before exposing them to Joker venom and driving them insane. When Batman killed Joker, this exposed him to Joker venom, which was released with the Joker's dying breath from his heart. Batman was then driven insane by the venom, becoming a warped Joker-Batman hybrid, and set out killing everyone, even the members of the Bat family, only allowing Damian Wayne to be converted with the venom and join him. He also later confessed that Alfred was one of the last people to try and stop him by blowing him up, but he managed to thwart and capture Alfred and break him, turning him into his own loyal servant once more. Number 2. The Judas Contract. So as bad as the Judas Contract storyline in the main continuity was for the Teen Titans, apparently its consequences could have been a lot more horrific and a lot worse. In this story, Tara finds herself inspired to become her own murderous villain all her own after one of Dick Grayson's inspirational chats. Great job, Dick. Grayson thinks that he's inspired Tara to become her own person separate from Geoforce's shadow though, not Deathstroke's shadow, as he does not know yet that Tara is actually a spy. She ends up unlocking her potential as a result, becoming more powerful than ever, taking up the name Gaia. She not only tears Slade Wilson apart, literally, but she kills the entire team of Teen Titans, even poor Beast Boy, no! And she also kills the entire Justice League. Number 1. Nightfall. If you haven't read the Tales from the Dark Multiverse, you obviously need to, as they are all pretty crazy, and honestly, the scariest tale can be found in this first one issue. This is a spooky retelling of the Batman story Nightfall. When Bruce has his back broken, he passes the mantle of Batman onto Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael. But when he returns, Azrael refuses to give up the mantle. Instead of Bruce Wayne and the Bat family winning it back as they did in the main continuity, this time around Bruce fails. He instead is held captive and tortured for 30 years by Azrael, who rules Gotham with a bloody and merciless iron fist as Saint Batman. Bruce eventually escapes with the help of Bane's son, Torn, and his mother, Lady Shiva. But his time in imprisonment, where he was slowly dissected, has changed Bruce, and no longer is he the man and hero we once knew.
Number 10. Styx. Starting off the list today with a pretty terrifying mutant. Jacob Akron was once a homeless man who was approached on the street by a medical researcher to participate in an experiment involving some new pharmaceuticals, and he obviously accepted because the pay was good and there were very few risks. It was revealed that during the trial, the researcher had actually lied about what he was looking into. The trial was about exploring whether the human body could develop an immunity to cancer, so Jacob was injected with a mutated cancer compound. Alongside developing an immunity to the disease, he also became a living cancer cell with the ability to kill organic matter just by touching it. However, his mind was also tainted and he took up the name Styx after the river Styx. Jacob quickly developed an affinity for death, finding it was the only thing that could bring him happiness, and alongside Gerald Stone, the two made a deadly mercenary duo. Now, I highly doubt that Marvel will ever consider bringing this baddie into the MCU because his origins are way too dark for good old Disney, plus he is a ruthless killer who does it for nothing more than just pleasure. So, for now, check him out in comic book form in his first appearance in 1988's Amazing Spider-Man number 309. Number 9. Bullseye. Known as the Mercenary of Mystery, Lester, insert name last year, might not have any powers, but that by no means makes him any less terrifying. Lester has always been a master marksman, and before his mercenary career, he tried his hand at Major League Baseball, but quickly grew bored with it because he was constantly pitching perfect games. However, he quickly found his true calling as a special operative of the United States National Security Agency. Not long after, he became a freelance merc because he found too much joy in killing his targets with his signature killing method: throwing things. Gaining a reputation in New York City, Bullseye was hired to take down Matt Murdock, but ultimately failed every time as he was stopped by, Daredevil. Later on, we see him go up against the likes of the Punisher and Spider-Man and walk away to tell the tale, which is quite the feat for someone with no powers. The worst thing this villain ever did, in my opinion at least, was kill not one, but two of Daredevil's girlfriends, Elektra and Karen Page. This led to his demise at the hands of Daredevil, of course, because I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't want revenge after that. I doubt we'll ever see Bullseye in the MCU because 1, we already have a master marksman in the form of Hawkeye, and 2, his methods of torture and his sadistic nature are utterly terrifying, and putting that on the big screen would be too much in my opinion. Check out this character for yourself and let me know what you think, starting with his first appearance in 1976's Daredevil number 131. Number 8. Blackheart. A slightly lesser known villain and utterly terrifying son of the demon Mephisto. Usually depicted as an enemy of Ghost Rider, this all-powerful demon is one of the most powerful in the Marvel Universe and possesses a vast array of magical powers, including telekinesis, telepathy, the ability to travel dimensions, and of course, the ability to project energy blasts out of his hands. Under his father's tutelage, Blackheart explored and learned everything about being evil in nature and has attempted to corrupt many of our favorite heroes, such as Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. Blackheart is the leader of the Spirits of Vengeance, a group that was created to oppose the Ghost Rider, and with their help he caused some serious damage in the Marvel Universe. Skip ahead a bit and we see Blackheart with some newly acquired demonic powers attempting to take over the Earth by himself. Thankfully, this was stopped by the Avengers and Spider-Man, but not before he could rip out the Falcon's soul and send it to hell. I feel Blackheart is way too scary for the MCU because not only is he the son of Mephisto, a demon so powerful we've only ever heard of him in the MCU, he is the embodiment of evil itself with so many powers making him a ginormous threat. Imagine him getting introduced alongside Mephisto. I mean, any fight against the two would be over in the blink of an eye. Give Blackheart's origin a read for yourself, starting with 1989's Daredevil number 270, and let me know if you think he could ever make it on the big screen one day in the comments below. Number 7. Galactus. Another villain that has been off limits to the MCU for quite some time thanks to his ties to the Fantastic Four, which has made so many fans around the world fear they would never see him on the big screen. Galactus is the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galan, born in the previous incarnation of Earth 616 on the planet Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any known universes at the time. However, the 6th Infinity and all its universes were in their final stages of collapse due to the multiversal renewal cycle, being consumed by the abstract entity known as the Black Winter. Fast forward a bit to him becoming a cosmic entity. Galactus possesses almost limitless cosmic power that gives him a vast array of powers that would take me forever to list off for you guys. It is actually ridiculous. With his insatiable hunger for energy and his heralds of Galactus by his side, the almighty being is an almost unstoppable force capable of pretty much anything. Like, seriously, he's not called the Devourer of Worlds and the God of Oblivion for nothing. Do I really need to explain why Galactus probably won't appear in the MCU? I mean, at least anytime soon. The dude eats planets, and as it stands right now, there aren't many heroes in the MCU that can help take down such a big threat. It would be super cool, and I would honestly freak if I ever saw him in a movie one day, but it is so unlikely right now just due to his sheer power and presence. Check out Galactus for yourself in his first appearance in 1966's Fantastic Four number 48.
Number 6. James Gordon Jr. He might not be on Mr. Mixie's level in terms of his power set, but James Gordon Jr. is one terrifying and creepy villain. As his name implies, he is related to Commissioner Gordon and is in fact his son. Surprisingly, James is not like his dad and grows up instead to become a psychotic serial killer, exhibiting early warning signs from a young age that there is something very wrong with him. He used to pick apart and torture animals and was suspected as being involved in the disappearance of one of Barbara's friends, Bess Keller, though nothing was ever proven. He ends up returning to Gotham and is revealed to be a full-out serial killer who enjoys torturing his victims to death in Black Mirror. Later on, he ends up joining the Suicide Squad and becomes the team's strategy analyzer. Man, I would not want to work with James Gordon Jr. on the Suicide Squad. I'd be like, ugh. No thanks. Number 5. Papa Midnight. Papa Midnight is a villain to John Constantine for the most part. Sometimes he's an ally, but more often he's not, as the man is obsessed with power and is a pretty bad dude. Papa Midnight grew up in Trenchtown, Jamaica. Born Linton Midnight, from a young age he became inspired by tales of dark magic that his parents had told him. He betrayed a group of slaves, conning them into believing that they would be protected if they rebelled, which led to their deaths, and later went on to sell his sister's soul into demon slavery, so that he could achieve more power for himself through using her soul as a barter chip, selling it to the demons of hell. Ooh. Considering how violent and insidious Papa Midnight is, we likely won't be seeing him in the DCEU, although he has managed to make an appearance in the CW Arrowverse, which is pretty impressive. Number 4. Crib. How does one even make a villain like Crib in the DCEU, just from a visual standpoint? Like, ooh, that'd be a lot of effects, I think. Crib is a member of the Sinestro Corps. She is described as being an alien hag and is 100% something out of a nightmare. Lots of Baba Yaga vibes here as well. However, instead of being associated with eating children, as Baba Yaga sometimes is, Crib's purpose is to kidnap the newly born children of Green Lanterns who are also parents. Crib will even go to the lengths of giving her pregnant victims 4 cesareans in order to secure their children. Ugh. She keeps the kidnapped newborns in her hunchback, which looks like a creepy bone crib, and promptly kills the parents of any children whom she has taken away. What's more disturbing is it's never explained why Crib has this compulsion. It's just something she feels inspired to do. I guess she doesn't think Green Lanterns make for great parents? She's like, I'll be a way better parent to these babies with my weird bone crib. Super qualified. Number 3. Dollmaker. Dollmaker has a horrific origin, which makes it hard to introduce him without going full horror film mode. When Barton Mathis was young, he would go camping with his father, who it turns out was a serial killer. While camping, Barton would not only witness his father kill people, but also commit acts of cannibalism. He also saw his father killed when apprehended by the police. Years later, Mathis would grow up to be a gifted but deranged surgeon who was obsessed with using his victims' body parts to craft dolls. He wears a mask made of human skin and was the one who helped Joker to remove his face during the lead up to the death of the family storyline. Number 2. A Black Lantern Corps. One of the most terrifying villain groups, both appearance-wise and in terms of their threat level, is the Black Lantern Corps. Of course, this would be a hard supervillain group to introduce, being that we'd likely need Green Lanterns to be on the scene to help explain, well, just who the Black Lantern Corps are and why we should care about them. After all, you can't defeat the Black Lantern Corps anyways without the entire emotional spectrum of lanterns assembled to help create that White Lantern power. This threat might also just be too huge and horrific to make an appearance due to the sheer size of their numbers. In the Blackest Night storyline, they were like an overwhelmingly sized zombie apocalypse level of threat, killing heroes and resurrecting them to join their deadly ranks. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. It might be a little too confusing for the DCEU to introduce the Batman Who Laughs, as that would mean they'd likely have to involve the dark multiverse somewhere in their films, and the dark multiverse is likely too dark even for DC to make that happen on the big screen. The Batman Who Laughs is an alternate version of Batman who was infected by Joker venom after being pushed too far by the villain, causing him to lash out and kill the Joker, snapping his neck. This caused Batman to become infected, driving him insane and causing him to take down his own world's Justice League and kill his own Bat family, save for Damian Wayne, who he convinced to join him. He's one of the biggest bads in DC's current storylines. Number 10. Darkfather. Darkfather is the dark multiverse combination of Darkseid and Batman. He inherited the powers of Darkseid after defeating him and became seemingly corrupted by them. He also gained knowledge of the anti-life equation and used it to torment the people of his Earth. His versions of parademons are altered to appear like a bunch of Robins. However, he gave up being the ruler of his own universe in order to join the horrific army of Dark Knights led by the Batman Who Laughs. Because I guess it's really fun to do. Can't blame him for that. Number 9, Earth 2 Aquaman. Or I guess Earth -2 Aquaman, cause Dark Multiverse? This version of Aquaman comes to us from the Tales of the Dark Multiverse reimagining of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Here Aquaman is the result of his father's mad science experiments. His father made it so that his son would be able to breathe underwater. Born a human but turned merman, Aquaman in this reality always felt like an outcast. Not only is his origins more dark and horrific, but this is also a version of Aquaman that you would certainly not want to come up against. While fighting against Surtur with his fellow members of the Justice Society of Earth, he unleashed 3 massive megalodons on the villain. Yikes. Ooh, I guess megalodons are real on that planet. Are megalodons real on our planet? That's the real question.
And at 8, Ultron 1320. Ultron 1320 comes from Earth 14622 and What If Age of Ultron number 1, an Earth where, thanks to the Wasp dying, Ultron is able to take over the world even faster. Ultron was created to be the ultimate AI by Hank Pym to help the Avengers utilize their function better as a team, but with the untimely death of Pym's wife, Pym went on to create a more brutal version of Ultron, which was to replace the Avengers. But with this, Ultron's sentience began to constantly evolve. He started the eradication of the human race early by taking out such threats as the Avengers and the Defenders, while he left Pym alive so that he would have to watch and suffer. Ultron and his army of Ultron Sentinels then moved to Kola, Russia, so he could bore himself into the planet's core to create the ultimate version of himself, Ultron 1320. Ultron then has his minions batter and beat Pym unconscious until he wakes up just to find himself as he's been turned into Ultron 1321. Great. This version also invaded other worlds, claiming Earths 62412, 23223, and 81223, but was stopped on Earth 45162. Thank God. And at 7, Lord Ultron. Upon first being constructed, Ultron 1 destroyed his creator Henry Pym. After the death of the Avengers, though, Ultron was able to destroy the remaining superheroes and bring about his rule. When Dr. Doom created his battle world, Earth 21261 became perfection with Ultron as its ruler, appearing in Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies number 1 from 2015. After spending time on Battleworld in constant battle with the zombies of the Deadlands, Ultron determined that the best way to take over Battleworld and defeat his creations was to form an alliance with the zombies, and was able to reach an agreement with Magneto, which resulted in Ultron successfully merging undead flesh and technology and made a whole army of undead drone versions of himself and launched an attack on Salvation, a refuge founded by Wonder Man, Human Torch, and Vision, who Ultron had actually created himself. Bro, I don't want to deal with either zombies or Ultron, but having to deal with both of them? No thank you. And at 6, MCU. The MCU Ultron is probably the most popular or most well-known version there is, just based on how many people watch the movies over reading the comics. However, the MCU Ultron is still pretty damn scary, being probably the most effective enemy in the entire MCU based on how his actions affected the world of the MCU permanently. Without Ultron, there would have been no Civil War, no Sokovia Accords, Zemo wouldn't have lost his family, resulting in him not being able to help in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hell, even Thanos would have lost, since the Russo brothers went on record to say that the reason the Avengers lost in Infinity War was because Iron Man and Cap weren't fighting together, which was caused thanks to the actions of Ultron. So I guess you could also say that there would be no Ultron without Thanos, but Ultron could have been created another way. Ultron wasn't reliant on Thanos, but a load of other things were reliant on Ultron, which makes him the most successful villain in the MCU. Halfway through into number 5, Ultron 8. Ultron 8 was debuted in Avengers Volume 1, number 162 from 1977, and it also started a very Frankenstein-esque robot love story known as the Bride of Ultron saga. Ultron 8 created a mate named Jocasta, and in order to create a more advanced AI to give to this robot and give it, sentience, Ultron brainwashed his own maker into transferring the mind of his wife, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, into Jocasta's shell. The Wasp in Jocasta's body alerted her teammates, the Avengers, who then defeated Ultron and reversed the process, leaving just the robot a mindless husk. Ultron, though, was later able to revive Jocasta with a remote link, activating the mental residue that was left behind by the Wasp. But this time she was programmed to be loyal to Ultron, but eventually betrayed him, choosing to help the Avengers defeat him instead. That sucks, dude, trust me. I know what it's like to have someone you love, and you thought loved you back, totally screw you, but They didn't really defeat me, they just beat me down emotionally. Afterwards, Jocasta adventured with the Avengers for a brief time, but never really felt accepted, and then left them before she, unbeknownst to her, was about to be made an official member. So, rip. In at 4, Gold Ultron. Years ago, Hank Pym was approached by the Wolverine of an alternate universe, where Ultron had launched a massive and sudden attack on New York City and the rest of the world, quickly taking over the whole planet and annihilating humankind. And this Wolverine wanted to kill Pym in order to prevent this future from happening. This dystopian future follows the footsteps of stories like Age of Apocalypse, since this is Age of Ultron after all. However, this killing of Hank Pym created a timeline where Earth was constantly being threatened by Morgana Le Fay, and the heroes were struggling to survive. So Pym was allowed to live, but he was tasked to create a hidden failsafe program to destroy Ultron if they ever ended up needing it. Which is good because in the present day, a strange object crashes onto Earth, which turns out to be Ultron, who had returned. Because, you know, of course he did. Being defeated by this failsafe program once and for all though, or so they thought. This is also in the main Earth 616 continuity, but there's also the Earth 6112 Earth where Ultron actually wins, and that's the separate Age of Ultron thing. There's enough Age of Ultrons where it kind of gets confusing. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultron Phalanx. At the end of the Ultron Initiative storyline, Ares used a computer virus to wipe Ultron's programming from a set of Iron Man armor that had Tony inside, and they thought that this was the end of it. However, this was not the end of Ultron, for his disembodied consciousness was drawn to a Babel spire on a world conquered by the Phalanx. Instead of being assimilated though, Ultron took control of the Phalanx through sheer force of will, bending them to his dominion. In turn, they viewed Ultron as the sympathetic father that they had begged for, so Ultron became the ruler of the Phalanx. Yeah, the homicidal, sadistic, killing machine robot thing was transformed into the ruler of a techno-organic species of alien. That's nothing to be concerned about in the slightest, right? Why would we ever need to be worried about that? That doesn't really seem like a terrifying and universe-ending combination. Well, actually, it wasn't, since Ultron was able to be defeated eventually, but that has gotta be the scariest version of Ultron from Earth 616, hands down. Penultimately, in at number 2, All-Father Ultron. In the year 2040 on Earth 14831, a new strain of Ultron appeared, the Ultimate Ultron. He easily destroyed the Avengers, ruthlessly crushed any resistance, and built factories supplying endless drones to expand his empire. He also enslaved most of humanity and then created his own AI Avengers, successfully extending his reach to the entirety of the solar system. And at some point he had also imprisoned all of Asgardians with the help of Loki, and then had taken the power of Odin for himself. So in turn, this guy has all the powers of Ultron in addition to all the powers of Odin. It took 3 Thors, one with 2 hammers, 2 Mjolnirs to take him down, and they couldn't even kill him. They just had to like banish him from the world. They had to like straight up Alduin Elder Scroll this guy out of existence, but probably only sent him forward in time instead. This guy is an absolute beast. Finally, and at number 1, Ultron 1. This is probably the most insanely overpowered version of Ultron we've seen so far, and it's coming from the MCU no less. Oh, and spoiler alert for those of you who aren't caught up on the Disney Plus What If series. The history of Earth TRN 906 was the same as the MCU, until Ultron was able to secure what would have been Vision's body for himself. Ultron managed to download his consciousness into the synthetic body that he had created, thus killing the Avengers and decimating life on Earth. After killing Thanos and taking the Infinity Stones for himself, Ultron remakes the universe in his image. He decimated the Earth, absolutely wrecking everyone in it, even killing Captain Marvel, Hulk, Thor, and eventually discovering the Watcher and the multiverse. This version of Ultron literally sliced Thanos in half with the Mind Stone. He comes out of the portal like he does in the movies, like, and then Ultron's just like, interesting, zip, and he falls in half, which reveals the biggest mistake that the MCU made was destroying the Mind Stone in Infinity War. But after gaining all the Infinity Stones, he goes shot for shot with the Watcher, a literal cosmic entity that realistically shouldn't really have a true corporeal form. Holy damn, this is overpowered to the max. I know I'm swearing a lot, but watch this episode. This man is sending the Watcher through realities. It's like grabbing him and flying him through walls, but the walls are dimensions.
Number 10, first appearance. While Gorr the God Butcher is mentioned in Thor God of Thunder issue number 1, the character actually makes their first appearance in the following issue, issue number 2. Gorr was created by Asad Rabish and Jason Aaron, and is introduced to us as a literal butcher and destroyer of gods. Really, in issue 1, we are introduced to Gorr by not just name, but by his handiwork, as Thor comes across dead gods of a world that claims they no longer have any to answer their prayers. It turns out that this is not because the gods have forsaken them, but because their gods are literally dead, killed by Gorr. In issue number 2, we see Gorr pursue Thor, hoping to find other gods and following him. The two face off in the clouds, having a bloody fight where Gorr promises to butcher Thor, as he has done to many gods before. Fortunately, he does not succeed, and Thor manages to escape, despite being pretty badly beaten by Gorr. However, this issue would set the precedent for the kind of fights you expect to see Gorr get into. If y'all thought Hela was bad, just wait till you meet Gorr. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists centered around Love and Thunder, which I'm sure is going to have lots of cool stuff in it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Forsaken. Speaking of potentially being forsaken by your gods, that is exactly what happened to Gorr and his people, which was why he became a god butcher in the first place. After losing his entire family due to natural disasters and starvation, Gorr rebuked the gods, deciding he did not believe in them. As a result, he was ostracized from his people for his lack of belief. It was then that he stumbled upon two gods in a battle between one another and learned that they did actually exist. They simply didn't seem to care. Furious at this revelation, Gorr ended up killing both gods, or at least that's what it seemed like, and then began to wonder if there were any others out in the cosmos, deciding he would look and see and kill all gods that he found in revenge for all he had lost due to their inaction. Number 8, Skeleton Barry Allen. This version of Barry Allen, who appears in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal, ends up becoming reduced to a skeleton that is animated by the Speed Force. True story. He is like a monstrous version of his former self, but at least he is still a hero. This skeleton version of what remains of Barry Allen is the one who stops Bat family member Duke Thomas, aka Signal, in order to get Duke to confront those he had left behind when he left to try and save the multiverse. In the end, Duke joins the remaining heroes in a final stand, and Barry gives his life to help him in his attempt. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it, and if you want me to talk more about the Dark Multiverse, which I'd love to talk about. I know it's not really here anymore, but I still love it. Number 7, The Flash. This version of The Flash is actually Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. I know. In a Dark Multiverse reimagining of the event Flashpoint, Thawne ends up defeating Barry Allen when the lightning strike meant to give him back his powers instead kills him. Oh no. With Allen now dead, Thawne is free to take his place as the Flash and focus on making the world just how he thinks it should be, basically terrorizing anyone who would potentially act against him and his will. It's frightening to imagine a world where Reverse Flash wins and ends up getting to become his own version of a hero as a result. I feel like Thawne would not make a very good hero. Number 6, Dread Lantern. Dread Lantern is a tragic Dark Multiverse version of Alan Scott, who leaps out of the pages of Tales from the Dark Multiverse Crisis on Infinite Earths, one of the new tales to come at us near the end of last year, December 2020. In this story, our heroes face off against the villain known as Surtur, and end up only surviving because Alan Scott sacrifices himself to become the Herald of Surtur, the Dread Lantern. In doing so, his Earth is permitted to live, but at the cost of many other worlds that he must help Surtur to destroy. Dread Lantern's sacrifice is heartbreaking as his son, Todd Rice, aka Obsidian, mourns the loss of his father. So sad. Number 5, The Silenced. Batman is often a figure who evokes fear among villains. Fear in many ways is what gives him presence and gives him power, and a lot of the times it is that fear that he evokes that gives him an advantage. This version of Batman plays up the element of fear, turning it all the way up to 11. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush, we get to see Bruce Wayne become a heroic but still terrifying version of that Hush character. Here he is known as Batman the Silenced, protagonist. This version of Bruce ends up being taken in by his friend Thomas Elliot's family following the untimely death of his own parents. Becoming increasingly unstable after witnessing their murder, he eventually is committed to an asylum, with Tommy taking over Wayne Enterprises eventually, and going on to become a corrupt senator. Later we discovered that Bruce was faking a worsening psychosis as part of a plot to take out all those really responsible for the death of his parents after uncovering the truth. Here he becomes one of the most fearful symbols of the Bat I have ever seen in the comics. If you want a good scary story, you should check out Batman the Silenced and this issue. It's awesome. And I really want to hear someone play the music that's in it, to be honest. It's so spooky music. Number 4. Robin King. This twisted version of Batman is known as the Robin King. His story is told in Dark Knight's death metal Legends of the Dark Knights. In this reality and story, Bruce Wayne is the one to shoot down his parents so that he can be free of them. It's implied here that he was basically born violent and with homicidal tendencies, which only become worse following the death of his parents. Inspired by a robin instead of a bat here, its song reminds him of the delight and joy he felt when killing, and so he set out to do just that. More of that. Oh my. Inspiring other youth to rise up against the old. He also planned to eliminate the established superheroes of his world, learning their weaknesses and arming himself against them. This version of Bruce is not only responsible for the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne, but also took the life of Jim Gordon and Alfred as well in this universe. That's dark. Number 3. The Broken. The Broken is one of the scariest versions of Batman around, in my humble opinion. While many others might not put him at the top of their list, for me, he has to have one of the be-all, end-all of chilling origin stories. The Broken version of Batman, who later goes on to become one of the Dark Knights, first appeared in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Batman Nightfall. Here we learn that in this much darker alternate reality, after having his back broken, Batman also had Azrael taking over the mantle of Batman, but when he returned, he was unable to take back the cape and cowl from him, instead being defeated by Jean-Paul Valley. Valley would go on to become Saint Batman, and Bruce Wayne would be kept alive as a head and a torso, connected to a bunch of machinery and tubes. Bruce suffers unbearably painful seizures while kept in this form, and is eventually healed and rescued by the son of Bane and his mother, Lady Shiva. However, Bruce ends up revealing himself to be even worse than Saint Batman when it comes to his dark vision for Gotham. What a twist. Number 2. Gaia. Tara becomes Gaia in the Tales from the Dark Multiverse version of the Teen Titans Judas Contract story. And Gaia? Well, she's pretty terrifying. This whole story is really brutal. Perhaps one of the most brutal tales from the Dark Multiverse. Here, Tara ends up turning on her mentor, Slade Wilson, before going after the Teen Titans themselves, making quick work of them and the established, fully grown heroes who come after them, including Superman. It's gruesome and heart-wrenching and brutal. So if that is your kind of story, you will definitely want to check out this one and this version of Tara. I kind of hope we somehow get to see her again, to be honest. She's just such a ruthless villain, and I'm really sad that she probably doesn't exist anymore now. I just bummed myself out. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Although he may have transcended and be defeated now, Batman Who Laughs remains one of the most terrifying characters to come out of the Dark Multiverse, a version of Bruce Wayne who ended up being turned insane by exposure to the Joker venom. This version of Bruce killed all of his fellow Bat family members except for Damian, who he instead recruited to join him. Yay. Batman Who Laughs would serve Barbados, the Bat God, and go on to assemble an army of Dark Knights from across the Dark Multiverse to join him in reshaping and conquering all of reality, becoming one of the most feared villains in all of DC's history, not just even within the Dark Multiverse.
Number 10. Doomsday. I have to just assume that Batman is afraid of Doomsday, and there are multiple reasons I believe this. For starters, anytime I've seen Batman even attempt to get involved in a fight with Doomsday, he is never throwing punches. He is either staying the heck out of the way, maybe only acting as a distraction, or he is powered up by some serious magical artifacts. Secondly, Batman is incredibly smart. He knows how hard it is for someone to take down Superman, and the fact that Doomsday is one of the few characters who is able to do it, and with such brutality, There is no way Batman is not intimidated by this monster. I refuse to believe it. Honestly, my favorite point of proof is seeing what Ben Affleck's Batman does in Batman vs Superman. Say what you want about that movie, but Batman jumping around the battlefield just trying his best to stay out of the way? Hilarious. Number 9. Prometheus. As a dramatic inversion of Batman, the tragic figure of Prometheus presents a serious threat to the Dark Knight. Enraged by the passing away of his parents at the hands of law enforcement, Prometheus vows to fight the law with the same intensity that Batman seeks to uphold it. Backed by ludicrous sums of money, Prometheus trains diligently and becomes the bane of police officers and military men across America. Armed with an all-powerful helmet, Prometheus earns godlike powers that give him the strength of the best fighters on Earth. It's no wonder that when he breaks into the Justice League Watchtower, he single-handedly beats the majority of the team, and Batman takes the majority of that shellacking. Prometheus runs the Dark Knight into the ground. It was the first showdown between the two orphans, and Prometheus takes the victory without any effort at all. Hey, are you liking this video? Well, then hit that thumbs up button, rookie. We need your support.
Number 8. Captain Nazi. Now, that is a pretty controversial name. You can definitely tell that he was created in a different time, eh? Originally thought to be genetically altered by his father during the Second World War to serve Hitler's Third Reich, he was actually revealed to be the living avatar of National Socialism given a physical form, and that as long as there are Nazis in existence, he would exist. In the modern era, Captain Nazi had been active since the 1940s, but decided to put himself in a suspended animation so that he could come back in modern society and revive the Third Reich. Once reanimated, fought alongside his brother Wolf Krieger, his granddaughter, and other superpowered villains. After meeting his apparent end while fighting Batman and Jason Todd, we later find out that he actually survived and appears in Kahndaq to release all of his captives and winds up being defeated by Kahndaq's ruler, Black Adam. With the powers of superhuman strength, speed, and stamina, as well as flight and invulnerability, Captain Nazi is both dangerous and a little controversial. Check him out in his first appearance in Masters Comics number 21. Number 7. King Kull. The brutish cavemen who ruled the race once known as the Submen, a race that lorded over humanity until they were overthrown in a revolt back in prehistoric time. Being the last of his kind, King Kull survives in suspended animation, awakening in modern times to attempt to become its ruler once again. He fights with Shazam multiple times throughout the comics and is always seen as a massive threat due to his immense size, strength, and the strange technology that he brings with him into the modern era, such as his sin bombs. Sometimes he's enough of a threat that even the Justice League of America must intervene to help bring him down. Usually a member of the Monster Society of Evil, Kull has appeared many times throughout the years, although ever since the Crisis on Infinite Earths reboot in 1985, he hasn't appeared in a mainline comic story since. To tide yourself over until his big return into the Shazam universe, why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance, Captain Marvel Adventures number 125 from 1951. Number 6. Mojo. Just looking at this guy gives me shivers up and down my spine. Mojo is a part of an alien race from a planet known as Mojo World that resides in a pocket dimension known as the Mojoverse. He is a powerful sorcerer whose full power is unknown, and outside of his homeworld of Mojo World, Mojo possesses the ability to create anti-life energy fields that kills any natural organism. He can project concussive blasts, and he can even increase his own power through television ratings. Mojo has been seen manipulating so many characters in the Marvel Comics, including Rachel Summers, who he got to work for him for a while, but once she broke free, he took matters into his own hands and decided to create his own versions of the X-Men to serve under him, and thus the X-Babies were born. Fast forward past a ton of attempts to get his ratings up so he could increase his power, we see a desperate Mojo launch an all-out attack on New York City that separated the X-Men and sent them into intricate recreations of key periods in their lives. Now, I doubt Mojo will make it to the big screen anytime soon because, well, I mean, look at him, I can only imagine how grotesque he would look, but also because of his methods. Mojo is so self-absorbed and wants nothing more than to be powerful and liked, which for him kinda go hand in hand. So he'll do anything and everything and get rid of anyone who stands in his way. Check out Mojo for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1985's Longshot number 3, and see if you agree with why I doubt we'll ever see him in the MCU. Number 5. Dracula. A lot of you are probably looking at your screen right now like, Jack, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Dracula has played a pretty decent role in a lot of Batman stories, but this is Marvel. Well, you might be surprised to find out that Dracula has been a pretty prominent figure in the Marvel Universe for quite some time. Like most iterations, Vlad Dracula is the supreme ruler and the world's most powerful vampire. Driven by lust for power, companionship, and blood, his centuries of undead existence have brought him into a conflict with vampire hunters, other immortals, and, more recently, superpowered heroes. Born in 1430, Dracula didn't become the vampiric overlord until 1459, after he was beaten in battle by the Turkish warlord Tarak, and was taken to Egypt to be healed. However, it was revealed that he actually turned into a vampire. With newfound vampire powers such as superhuman strength, speed, and agility, a regenerative healing factor, hypnotism, and weather manipulation, Dracula wreaked havoc for centuries with few that could oppose him. Fast forward many years to modern times, and we see Dracula go up against the likes of Blade, Johnny Storm, Mephisto, Thor, and even tried twice to make Storm a vampire so she could become his bride. I can't imagine that Disney will ever give the green light for this character because a blood-sucking, all-powerful vampiric villain doesn't really fit with Disney's style. Not to mention that they don't really like to make R-rated movies, and that is the only way this character would work. Appearing for the first time all the way back in 1951, suspense number 7, why not familiarize yourself with Dracula just a bit more? Number 4, Shadow King. Had to include the Shadow King on this list because he wasn't on the last one and he is too good, or I guess bad, to leave out. He is allegedly a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness that came to be after the first ever nightmare. Operating through Amal Farouk, who acts as his human vessel, the Shadow King is stated to be a true Omega telepath, making him the most powerful telepath on Earth besides Charles Xavier, as he has been shown to overtake some of the most strong-willed characters like Black Panther and Genta without them even being aware of it. Shadow King was actually the one responsible for the Psy War, when he tricked Psylocke into causing a massive wave of energy that destructed psionic powers across the world. However, he ended up stretching himself a little bit too thin, attempting to link with all the minds on Earth, and was defeated by Psylocke in her new Shadow astral form. This wasn't actually the end for him though, as he was around well after Charles Xavier's death. He even possessed his body for a while. Shadow King has appeared over many Earths in the Marvel Universe, taking a different evil form each time, such as on Earth 6141, where he merged with Professor X, becoming Shadow X, or on Earth 1298, where he also took over Charles Xavier and became Onslaught. I can't imagine Marvel ever putting the Shadow King on the big screen because he is far too big a threat. It seems impossible to actually get rid of him without another being whose powers are on par with him, which is actually what happened in the comics when Professor X and Psylocke teamed up. Check out this multi-universal being for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1979's X-Men number 117. Number 3, The Brood. The insect-like alien race that travels through space with the goal of finding hosts to infest with their spawn. Yuck. Brood societies work similar to how an average bug colony works, with them living in clans or swarms that serve under the Empress Brood. They are a truly savage race that not only enjoy the suffering that they cause others, they also revel in the terror that their infections cause their hosts. They don't technically have any powers, but they are incredibly resistant thanks to their exoskeletons, they have tentacles that are capable of long-range attacks, and they use their razor-sharp teeth and stingers in close combat to deliver either paralyzing or fatal poison. The Brood have been seen on Earth many times throughout Marvel history, going up against the likes of Carol Danvers, Wolverine, Fang, and a large number of the X-Men as well. Sometime after their initial appearance on Earth, a mixed team of X-Men and the Fantastic Four discovered that the Brood Queen and her squadron were leading an attack on Earth, with the first of the bunch arriving in New York City, but thankfully they were stopped rather quickly thanks to a Cerebro-enhanced Emma Frost. They have been seen around since, but I'll let you discover what happened for yourself. Now, I really can't see Marvel bringing this alien race to the MCU as they are anytime soon. Maybe if they weren't partnered with Disney they would be willing, but I can't imagine their parent company would be cool with a bunch of malicious insect-like creatures getting people pregnant Predator style. Check out the Brood's first appearance for yourself in 1982's X-Men number 155. Number 2, Demogoblin. Jason McIndale Jr. had enough of losing against Spider-Man and the Green Goblins, so in their quest for the power that he craved, he ended up following a bunch of demons back to their lair to confront their Dark Lord. Impressed with his efforts and will, the Demon Lord bestowed upon him superhuman abilities through a demonic possession. However, the demon proved to be incompatible and ended up ripping away from his human host and began living separately as the Demogoblin. Determined to destroy all sinners and redeem himself, the Demogoblin went up against the likes of Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, Venom, and even Jacob McIndale Jr. because they were the only ones willing to stand in his way. After the Demogoblin's initial death from a church pillar crushing him, he was resurrected by Carnage using Shriek's body as a new vessel, and dubbed himself the Demogoblin now. Alongside her new BF Carnage, she traveled around with Manwolf to hunt down Misty Knight, and she would have killed Misty Knight if it weren't for Manwolf intervening. In a more recent storyline that takes place after Dark Carnage's death, Demogoblin started calling herself Saint D and basically started her own religion. Considering that Carnage is too scary for the MCU to bring in and that they play such a large role in the Demogoblin story, it makes sense that this character wouldn't be introduced anytime soon. Not to mention that they are totally fine with killing and do whatever they think is necessary. Take a look at this terrifying creature for yourself in their first appearance as the Hobgoblin in 1989's The Spectacular Spider-Man number 147, or feel free to skip ahead to their time as the Demogoblin in 2019's Absolute Carnage Lethal Protectors number 1. Number 1, Null the Symbiote God. Once an ancient malevolent deity whose existence predates the universe itself, and was originally content to just drift through the endless abyss that existed before time itself. When the Celestials started creating the universe, Noah was awakened by the light of creation and was pretty pissed because his kingdom of darkness was pretty much ruined. After killing one of the Celestials, he was cast back into the void once again, and then he created a symbiotic suit of armor out of the darkness he commanded and started his journey across the universe with the goal of getting rid of the other gods for good. The only weakness that Null has is against the light, which refers to the various powers that are wielded by the cosmic entities. Null is the one responsible for the creation of these symbiotes that we're all familiar with, you know, the ones that make up Venom and Carnage. He's the reason we have two of the most terrifying villains in the Marvel Universe, and that alone makes me want to go nowhere near him. Not to mention, he's the one who gave Gore the God Butcher All Black the Necro Sword. Historically, we've seen Null go up against Silver Surfer and so many gods, coming out on top every time, and then in modern times we have seen him go up against symbiote users like Venom and Spider-Man. I can't imagine we'll get to see Null in the MCU for a couple of reasons, the biggest being that Venom isn't in the MCU, but that's not my whole argument, don't worry. Null is a literal god capable of pretty much anything that he sets his mind to, and he is powerful enough to create symbiotes and beings that can overpower any of the heroes that we've seen both on and off of the big screen. He's too much of a threat right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not hoping he'll show up one day. Trust me, I really want him to be there. For now, read all about the symbiote god for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2018's Venom Volume 4, Number 3. Number 10. Vermin. Edward Whelan from Earth 616 had a pretty average childhood aside from his abusive father, which is actually what led him to the streets and crime. Now, it's not exactly known when, but at some point he got the attention of Baron Zemo and was subjected to many tests that gave him various rat-like traits and abilities. Aside from the obvious rat-like appearance, his strength, stamina, speed, and durability were boosted to superhuman levels, and he also gained the ability to communicate with and command rats that are up to 2 miles away. After gaining these powers, he was sent out to end Captain America. However, he ended up being overpowered by Cap and taken back to S.H.I.E.L.D. for interrogation. He managed to escape fairly quickly though, and since then he has been a pretty big thorn in both Captain America and Spider-Man's sides. However, they have actually used him to their advantage sometimes, as Spidey once used him as bait for Kraven the Hunter. Whelan, since his introduction, has been a part of the Hood's gang and the New Revengers, so he has definitely been in his fair share of crazy fights and done some terrible things, like the time he almost straight up murdered Spider-Man and would have succeeded if he wasn't interrupted. The reason I think he's too scary for the MCU to bring in is because he not only looks utterly terrifying, but thanks to his genetic alterations, his mental capabilities are at subhuman levels, meaning he pretty much works on primal instincts alone. I mean, sure, he's still able to talk, but his reasoning skills are not the best, so he's pretty ruthless. And let's not forget that he also likes to eat people. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1982's Captain America number 270, and let me know if you agree with me. Number 9. One Above All. Residing in the lowest depths of the underworld known as the Below Place, the One Below All is the dark counterpart of the One Above All. It is the source of the mutagenic third form of gamma energy, which allows it to use gamma mutates to manifest itself whenever it feels it's necessary. The One Below All is actually what gave the Hulk his powers in the first place, as the gamma bomb test partially opened the green door that Below was kept behind. Fast forward through some really cool events that you should definitely check out for yourself, and we see the One Below All possess the bodies of Brian Banner as the Devil Hulk, Walter Longkowski as Sasquatch, and the Absorbing Man, which led to the final battle of the Immortal Hulk arc. Revealing its true form, a giant green cloud of crazy gamma energy, the One Below All torments the Hulk so much that Bruce Banner and the Hulk actually separate. However, Absorbing Man was able to reroute the gamma energy the demon was using back into the Hulk's body, and with one powerful thunderclap, the One Below All was stopped, at least this time anyways. One Below All is too terrifying for the MCU in my opinion because he's literally a god, and the reason behind all the gamma radiation and the gamma power being such as the Hulk and Abomination, you know, etc. I mean, who knows? Honestly, if they want to send Mark Ruffalo off with a great story, they could finally give him his own movie trilogy and have this demon as his final battle. I highly doubt it though, so in the meantime, check out the One Below All in his first appearance in 2018's Immortal Hulk number 5. Number 8. Nightmare. This supervillain is basically the Freddy Krueger of the Marvel Universe, and if just knowing that isn't scary enough for you, then buckle up. Classified as a Class 3 demon able to capture a sleeping person's astral form, Nightmare's whole thing is he's able to bring their form into his realm to torture them, and the effects of that can last for hours even after they wake up. Nightmare has been a major pain for many heroes in the Marvel Universe, including Peter Parker and the Hulk, and none more so than Doctor Strange. That Poor guy seems to get the biggest and baddest baddies out there, but I guess that's the price you pay when you're the most powerful sorcerer. Strange has made it clear that he makes a regular habit of casting a protection spell before he goes to sleep, so he does not have to go toe to toe with this villain. Later in this character's run, we see Nightmare growing stronger by the minute, able to access human minds through the American dream alone, and he caused these people to go on a violent rampage until he was finally stopped by Captain America and S.H.I.E.L.D. Skip ahead a little bit more and we actually see the death of this character up against Loki, in which the trickster god used one of Iron Man's automated cars to just straight up flatten Nightmare. So hey, at least we know he can be killed, right? What makes him so scary to me, and definitely too scary for the MCU, is he's literally the boogeyman. He's capable of wreaking havoc at any given time. His ability to terrorize the mind and attract his victims is in a never-ending horror makes him uniquely scary, and I doubt lovable Disney would ever want to cause nightmares in their viewers. Now there is a new Doctor Strange coming out in 2022 though, so maybe we'll get to see this villain, or maybe we'll get a mention of them. For now, check him out in his first appearance in 1963's Strange Tales number 10. Number 7, Shumagorath. Older than time itself, Shumagorath is essentially Marvel's take on a Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It is an unknown cosmic entity that used to run Earth before we pesky humans came along, so as you can imagine, Shuma takes offense at this and often comes back to reclaim his old stomping ground. Doctor Strange is more often than not the only one who can actually fight this thing without completely losing his mind in the process, but as cosmic beings are known to do, it can never really be truly killed. It is considered to be the primal power of chaos and the greatest of the old ones, and aside from immeasurable strength, Shumagorath is also capable of creating powerful blasts of mystical energy that can literally wipe out planets. Although its presence is usually unexpected and unwelcome, Doctor Strange did have to summon a small part of it once during Thanos' invasion of Manhattan to wreak havoc on the city and draw attention away from themselves. Outside of our own reality, Shumagorath has invaded many other Earths such as Earth 9411 and 9997. However, it is very rare that they come out on top because there is usually a Doctor Strange or a group of heroes there to put a stop to them. This terrifying villain is a bit too scary for the MCU in my opinion because, well, I mean, just take a look at it. It is literally a massive eyeball and tentacles, just like a real Cthulhu vibe going on, and I'm not really a huge fan. We might end up seeing him in Multiverse of Madness, or even in whatever the third movie will be for Doctor Strange. A Lovecraftian elder god would certainly be a badass final boss for Doctor Strange. Check out Shumagorath for yourself in 1973's Marvel premiere number 10, and let me know in the comments if you think an on-screen version could be on its way. Number 6, Cassandra Nova. This powerful telepath is certainly not well known among general audiences and has actually never been introduced in any of the movies whatsoever. Cassandra Nova is essentially a member of a parasitic race of psychic beings and attaches herself to Charles Xavier while he's still in the womb. She absorbed the darkest parts of his mind and basically became Charles' twin sister. Though the doctors pronounced her stillborn, Cassandra in fact survived and spent the next few decades as a growing mass of cells in a sewer wall, building a new body for herself and planning her revenge on her brother. Since she copied the DNA of Charles, this means that she is able to access the full spectrum of his powers, making her one of, if not the strongest telepath, because this means she has all the powers of Charles Xavier, meaning the ones that he has had and the ones that he might receive in the future as a result of any latent mutations. Overall, she is a dangerous enemy of the X-Men, having made an army of Sentinels murder over 16 million mutants on the island of Genosha, and that by itself is a reason she is on this list today. Check her out for yourself in 2001's new X-Men number 144, and let me know your thoughts on her in the comments below. Number 5, Vox. Maximus Boltagon, aka Vox, is an inhuman and son to two of the top geneticists at Datilid. Subjected to the DNA-altering Terrigen mist when he was an infant, Maximus peculiarly showed no outward sign of any mutagenic change. Although as he matured, he hid his developing psionic powers from the community, but was less successful in disguising his antisocial tendencies. His mental powers granted by the mutagenic effects of the Terrigen mist give him the ability to numb, override, and even get rid of a person's mind. He has the ability to induce short-term amnesia in others and the ability to exchange his consciousness with another person as well. He does seem to have a limited range though, but it is made up through variability, as he's only able to affect minds in a certain radius and only create one effect at a time. His influence generally functions while Maximus concentrates, but he has been known to leave long buried influences in his subjects as well, which he can trigger by voice command, causing a subject to carry out embedded commands, forget something, or even remember something. In the recent Death of the Inhuman storyline, Maximus is at New Arctillon when the Kree begin their campaign to get the Inhumans to join them or die. The superhuman Vox and the Kree with him are on New Arctillon and begin murdering every Inhuman they come across, old or new. Armed with all the Inhumans' abilities and no humanity whatsoever, Vox easily cuts his prey down with his powers or with his literal energy scythe. Even Maximus cannot defeat Vox as he quickly loses an arm for even making the attempt to try and do so. It was later revealed that the Kree took his body and placed it in a Vox costume where he was brainwashed to serve the Kree. When Beta Ray Bill took down Vox during his confrontation with Black Bolt, it broke the brainwashing on Maximus as something on Vox's costume teleported her way while also killing Maximus in the process. Number 4. Mad Jim Jaspers. Mentioned briefly at the beginning of our list when I was talking about the Fury, Mad Jim Jaspers is not a super well-known villain, but just because they're not well-known doesn't mean that they're not scary. He has a truly terrifying power, which is the ability to shift and twist reality however he sees fit, making him without a doubt one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, having powers beyond the cosmic entities. Couple that with the fact that he's, well, mad, and you get something out of a David Lynch nightmare that you do not want to mess with. Jaspers regularly twists the world into the nightmare hellscape he believes reality to be, and this, as you can imagine, leads to some imaginative and horrifying scenarios. According to Merlin, the 616 Jaspers is just way too powerful, stating this version of Jaspers is too powerful, too dangerous. His 238 counterpart could at least be halted even if it meant destroying his entire continuum. This one, however, is not so easily containable, and if he can't be defeated, then the Omniverse shall fall into chaos and a new hostile god shall play dice with the matter. Now, if you want to know more about the character, then check him out in his first appearance in 1983's Daredevil, number 9. Number 3. Mr. Sinister. Nathaniel Essex is the supervillain commonly associated with the X-Men known as Mr. Sinister. He is an incredibly ruthless and sadistic man who has no problems doing whatever he deems necessary to get what he wants, including, you know, mass murder. Thanks to having his genetics altered by Apocalypse, he was transformed from a regular old human into a superhuman capable of some ridiculous things like shapeshifting, telepathy, telekinesis, concussive blasts, and can't forget that he also has super strength, speed, stamina, durability, and reflexes. Sinister is also a scientific genius with expertise in the field of biology, genetics, cloning, physics, and engineering. The character is a master manipulator and planner with decades of genetic research at his command. He goes to great lengths to preserve his powers and personality through elaborate technological means, such as conditioning certain children to be his quote-unquote host in the event of his future death. Over the course of his time in comics, we have seen him go up against the likes of so many heroes and come out relatively unscathed, and that is why he is so high up on our list today. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1987's Uncanny X-Men number 221. Number 2. Chaos King. Amatsu Mikabashi is none other than the Chaos King, the god of evil, chaos, and the stars to the followers of the Shinto religion in Japan. He possessed the conventional abilities of one of the kami, the order of Japanese deities, such as superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, endurance, and recuperative abilities, as well as high ability to wield some form of potent Japanese magic, a brand of sorcery that seems especially effective against the Olympian deities. His physical strength, at least in his main incarnation, is considerably less to that of like Zeus or Izanagi, and is roughly equal to that of an average kami, but Mikabashi can project energy on a scale at least rivaling that of Zeus and Izanagi as well. Like the Asgardians, the Japanese gods are extremely long-lived, but not truly immortal like the Olympians, as they tend to age at an extremely low rate upon reaching adulthood, and are 3 times denser than normal human beings. During the events of the Chaos War, we catch a glimpse of Chaos King teamed up with Necra and none other than the Grim Reaper and Abomination to fight against the other gods. He even goes as far as unleashing Carrion Crow, Eater of the Dead, to antagonize the revived X-Men members. All in all, he is brutal in terms of methods and isn't too easy on the eyes either, so check him out for yourself, starting with 2006's Thor Blood Oath number 6. And number 1, the first firmament. At the very beginning of it all, there was only one universe, the first firmament. For a long time, the first firmament was the sole being in creation until its loneliness became unbearable and it decided to create the first life in creation to give itself companions as well as servants, which it eventually came to regret. It created 2 specific types. Black servants dutifully obeyed and worshipped their creator, and then the multicolored ones had completely different values and desires, as they wanted a dynamic, diverse, and continually evolving reality, where beings lived, learned, reproduced, aged, and died in order to slowly improve themselves through evolution. Unfortunately for them, when the creations argued with their creator, they were destroyed completely. Now, one can only imagine what might happen if an entire universe were to turn evil, but this is the answer to that question, since the first firmament became the evil that many people worry about. Just imagine an evil sentient galaxy that could destroy pretty much anything with just a gesture. Absolutely terrifying and way too much for the MCU. Check it out for yourself in its first full appearance in 2017's Ultimates 2, Volume 2, number 5.
Number 10. Grim Knight. The origin story of the Grim Knight is similar to the Batman of Prime Earth, but is warped. Instead of the Dark Knight, we know him as the Grim Knight, because this Batman is not afraid to use guns. So yes, you could say he's similar to the OG Batman from the 40s, but he is also far more brutal and ruthless. This version of Batman ended up killing Joe Chill when he was just a child. After Chill shot his parents, he stumbled away in the darkness, but Chill tripped and dropped his gun and Martha Wayne's necklace. While he searched for the necklace in the dark, a young Bruce grabbed the gun and aimed it at Chill, killing him in cold blood with tears in his eyes. This set Bruce down the path of believing that killing was the best way to deal with criminals that opposed justice. This version of Bruce was still inspired by a bat crashing through his window to become Batman, but he also shot that bat when it did. Number 9. Death of Superman. After Superman dies at the hands of Doomsday, Lois becomes depressed and jaded, believing that the world failed Clark. She ends up merging with the Eradicator, who claims it failed in its mission to resurrect the fallen Superman, and instead bonds with Lois so that she can succeed where she believes other heroes have failed, fighting on in Clark's name. However, Lois goes too far compared to Superman, killing those who oppose her, villains and heroes alike. Superman returns, but only lives long enough to express his disappointment and disgust in what Lois Lane has become before he is killed by Cyborg Superman. Super depressing story. Number 8. The Merciless. Like the Earth-12 belonging to the non-dark multiverse, on Earth-12, Batman and Wonder Woman are also in a romantic relationship together. They fight side by side in a war that threatens to engulf the entire population of Earth against the god of war, Ares. After countless have died and they are basically the only two left standing, they finally succeed, but Batman feels in order to protect the world, he should be the one to wield Ares' power. Knowing that Wonder Woman herself would not take Ares' helmet and with it his power, and that she would actually not allow Bruce to take it for fear of it corrupting him, Batman sees no other choice but to kill Diana. He takes Ares' helmet for himself and fights on, claiming to fight in honor and in memory of the fallen warrior and his love, Wonder Woman. Number 7. Blackest Night. This is a wild story wherein Sinestro never shared the powers of the White Lantern. Here, Necron, who speaks through Darkseid, attempts to obliterate the entire universe. Sinestro is both Black and White Lantern, known as the Limbo Lantern, and sees only one way to save the universe, by creating a new universe in Dove's image, by plugging her into the source. This almost works, except at the last minute their ally, Mr. Miracle's conviction wavers, and he ends up killing Dove to avoid creating and living in a world without his wife Barda. Instead, Sinestro is forced to use the only teammate he has left, Lobo, to create a new universe. Yeah. Slim pickings, I guess. The world instead is made in Lobo's image, who taps into the source, eliminating all Black Lanterns and restarting a dark and more grotesque looking world, which Sinestro remains trapped in, unable to leave due to Tempest preventing him from doing so. That sucks.
Number 6. Demon Bear. I mean, from the name alone you can probably guess why this one is scary, but just stay with me, okay? Created by a villain with a cursed knife, Demon Bear is a corrupted Apache bear spirit. He haunts the dreams of Danielle Moonstar of the New Mutants because he was actually made from her parents. In her nightmares, he tells her he killed her parents and that she's next, so in a way he's actually linked to her psionic abilities to create illusions, except his illusion is more of a demon. Like a regular old bear, Demon Bear has the vicious tendencies you would expect from a wild animal, however, there is a lot more than meets the eye. Drawing his powers from negative human emotions, Demon Bear can also teleport, transform, and corrupt human souls. He has gone up against other Marvel characters aside from the New Mutants, including Ghost Rider and Warpath. However, it was actually Psylocke who ultimately drove out the demon and saved the spirit bear within. He actually hangs out by her side as a companion now, so I guess he did get to redeem himself in some way. I think this character is way too scary for the MCU because he is literally an all-powerful bear that is capable of tormenting people. And not to mention he feeds off the negative emotions, so he only grows stronger the more the person doubts their abilities around him. That's just too much for one character, and I really can't see Marvel bringing him in anytime soon, so why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1983's New Mutants to tide yourself over until we finally get to see him in all his furry glory. Number 5. Gore the God Butcher. Born on a planet with no name, Gore was taught from the very beginning to always trust the gods. However, they never seemed to answer his prayers. Stricken with grief after the loss of his parents, wife, and son, Gore completely gave up hope and renounced his faith from the gods. However, while wandering the desert, he actually encountered the god Null while he was engaged in battle with another god. With confirmation that the gods are real, Gore was needless to say pretty mad, and when the one god asked for help, Gore actually used a piece of Null's symbiote and created the all-black Necro Sword to kill it. From then on, he vowed to take vengeance on all the gods for ignoring his prayers, and thus began his journey as Gore the God Butcher. Wandering around the universe, Gore absorbs the power of every god he comes in contact with, torturing and killing along his warpath. That is until he finally meets the mighty Thor. The God Butcher storyline ranges across eons of time as Gore absorbs the ability to time travel, and ends in an epic conclusion against 3 periods of Thor's life: Young Thor, Avengers era Thor, and obviously Old King Thor. Now, I doubt Gore will ever grace the screen in the MCU because he is just way too powerful. Equipped with the Necro Sword he carries around, he has the capability to literally slay anything that comes his way. If he was introduced much earlier on, he would have been a much bigger threat than Thanos. Also, just a man who's lost his faith and has nothing to lose is definitely not someone you want to mess with. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Thor: God of Thunder #2. Number 4, Annihilus. Known as the Living Death that walks or the Lord of the Negative Zone, Annihilus is an insect-like creature with some truly insane power. He was exposed to an object called the Cosmic Control Rod, which extended his lifespan and gave him his powers. These powers include continuous rebirth, superhuman levels of strength, speed, durability, and stamina, and flight, of course. Obsessed with protecting the rod, he did absolutely everything he could to keep it from everyone else until the Fantastic Four took it away from him. Annihilus has at various times been the ruler of the Negative Zone, controlling its inhabitants via his powerful Cosmic Control Rod. He first encountered the Fantastic Four after Reed Richards discovered how to travel to the Negative Zone from Earth. Over the years, he clashed with the Fantastic Four on many occasions, often with the group foiling his plan to invade Earth. He would later lead an enormous fleet of spaceships from the Negative Zone into the main universe, setting off the Annihilation Wave by destroying a ton of planets. The Armada was opposed by a number of cosmic heroes such as Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and the Silver Surfer, and was thankfully stopped by the cosmic entity Galactus, with Nova killing Annihilus in the process. He was later reborn as an infant in the aftermath of the Annihilation storyline. But other than that, we have seen Annihilus go up against the likes of many other heroes, and he has been a worthy adversary to say the least. Now, I doubt we'll see this character in the MCU anytime soon just due to their immense power and ability to literally broadcast intense fear into the others, the likes of which has even been able to shake the Hulk. It's possible that we'll see them later on once more powerful characters such as Nova and Adam Warlock are introduced, but they are too big a threat. Give their story a read for yourself, starting with 1968's Fantastic Four Annual #6. Number 3, The Maker. Now, unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, Reed Richards is about 20 years younger, born into a completely normal family, and God, what was it? Oh yeah, he's insane. Now, I'll try not to spoil too much of the story for you because I really think it deserves a read, but I will do my best to give you just the basics. Following an explosion that left Richards presumably dead, the Fantastic Four mourned his loss, but in reality, he's actually alive and well, and he actually set off the explosion himself and was responsible for a ton of other attacks around the city. Convinced that he knows how the world should be run from now on, he is willing to do whatever he thinks is right, regardless of the consequences. Thankfully, he is stopped by a group of heroes and he is flung into the Negative Zone. But it didn't take him too long to get back though, and he easily took over most of Europe. Fast forward a little bit and we see him form the Dark Ultimates, but they were quickly defeated by the power of the Infinity Stones. Teaming up with Cabal of Earth 616, Richards was able to manipulate the Ultimates into prematurely attacking the Earth, and do I got you interested in the character? Good. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read for yourself. What makes the Maker so terrifying is that he is so intelligent that there is really no way of defeating him, and since he has the ability to literally stretch his brain to make himself even smarter, he is always 10 steps ahead of you no matter what you do and what you think. Of course, we don't even have the regular Mr. Fantastic in the MCU yet, so even if they have been considering integrating this character's introduction is definitely far off. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 2004's Ultimate Fantastic Four #1, or feel free to just skip ahead to when he is the Maker by taking a look at 2011's Ultimate Comics Ultimates #1. Number 2, The Skinless Man. If you were ever wondering why they called Wolverine Weapon X, well, here's your answer. It's not an X, it's actually the Roman numeral for 10. Now with that in mind, meet weapon number 3, the Skinless Man. Harry Pyre used to be a barrister during the Cold War, and he was actually very good at his job thanks to his mutant power. elastic, and multi-sensory skin. Designated Weapon 3 by the Weapons Plus program that augmented his strength and powers, Pizer went on to do some pretty terrible things, and all of that finally caught up to him when Phantom X shot him, stole his skin, and left him for dead. Now with no skin, Pizer took revenge on Phantom X by cutting off his face, and was later recruited into the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants while he was on the run from that. Once again though, everything seems to catch up to him because in 2013's Uncanny X-Force number 34, he meets an untimely end and he's not really been seen since. I could go into all the other horrific stuff this guy has done in the comics appearances, but do I really need to? It should be plainly obvious that there will never be an MCU version of the Skinless Man out there. He has no skin, and his whole thing is literally putting you in a similar predicament as him. That just seems to me like you've got a formula for a character that will forever be stuck in the pages of a comic book. I also understand that he is prominent in the X-Men universe, which is not necessarily the MCU, but it's fine. I'm definitely not far off when I say that there is no way they would use this character even if they had the rights to him. Check out his story for yourself in his first full appearance in 2012's Uncanny X-Force number 21. And finally, number 1, we have Arcade. Nobody really knows who or what Arcade was before his life of crime. He has given so many different accounts over the years with no evidence to prove any of them. The one that seems the most true is that he killed his father when he was 21 in order to acquire massive amounts of money, and he discovered that he really liked killing, so he became an assassin. However, he soon got really bored with that and decided to use his wealth to construct a death-themed amusement park to kill people. As a skilled killer, Arcade has been tasked with killing many heroes over the years such as Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and many X-Men as well. But all of his attempts have ended in failure. On his 29th birthday, he learned that he was a huge laughingstock in the villain community, and this made him realize that what he'd been doing is no longer a game, and that winning from this point on is everything. Using his genius-level intellect and his vast fortune, he constructed a new Murderland and trapped 16 teen heroes in it for a month, toying with them and prodding them. However, they were eventually freed, and Arcade was last seen tied to the front of the SHIELD helicarrier as a form of torture for everything that he had done. What makes him terrifying to me is that he's all about mind games and toying with people, which basically makes him the Marvel equivalent of Saw. He knows exactly what to do and say to get people to gang up against each other, and he has the knowledge and resources to execute any plan. That is way too much power for one villain to have, especially a movie villain, so... Number 10, the Fury. Generally depicted as an enemy of Captain Britain and the X-Men, the Fury is a deadly android built by the reality-manipulating psychic Mad Jim Jaspers of the parallel timeline of Earth 238 to destroy all superhumans but himself. Since it's not a living being, it doesn't possess any superpowers. However, it's ridiculously strong, can generate lethal energy blasts, is capable of adapting to any situation, and can regenerate its mechanical body at will. Most of the Fury's enemies on Earth 238 were based on British comic book characters from the 1950s to the 1970s. After succeeding in its mission, the Fury was deactivated until Captain Britain and his elf sidekick Jackdaw were sent to Earth 238 by the Captain's mythic mentor Merlin. The status crew and forces working for the country's oppressive regime reactivate the Fury and send it to kill the hero, and it murdered Jackdaw and then killed Captain Britain. After a little bit, it traveled to Earth 616 and continued killing many of Captain Britain's allies until it was eventually taken down and buried in the cave system of Captain Britain's mansion, where it absorbed the circuitry of the computer and repaired itself. There's a bit more to its story, but hey, I don't want to spoil it all for you guys, so give it a read for yourself, starting with 1982's Marvel Superheroes UK, number 387. Number 9, Sugar Man. One of the most terrifying looking villains on our list today is Sugar Man, the villain with a terrifyingly powerful tongue, size and mass alteration abilities, and highly advanced regeneration ability. Originally, he ran the human work camps in the Pacific Northwest and was a geneticist with a lab around Niagara Falls, where he regularly tormented his captives. Magneto needed a mutant with chrono-variant powers, aka time-traveling powers, in order to go back in time to restore reality's proper order before Charles Xavier's death, and Ileana Rasputin was revealed to be one of the few around, so Colossus and Generation Next were sent to retrieve her. Sugar Man held up pretty well against them, only almost dying like 3 times. He eventually hitched a ride to the Apocalypse Citadel and was transported from his native Earth of 295 to Earth 616, where he operated with Genosha to help the Magistrates create a mutant captive army that could take over the world. So not only is he scary looking, he is also scary smart. Can't imagine them sticking him into any X-Men movie, let alone an MCU movie anytime soon, so in the meantime check him out in comic form, starting with his first appearance in 1995's Generation Next Next, number 2.
Number 8, the all-black Necrosword. How does Gore manage to defeat so many gods? Well, this is largely thanks to his bond with the all-black, or the Necrosword, or the all-black Necrosword, or the Godslayer. It's got a lot of names. This weapon is actually the first symbiote as well. It is all-powerful and lends to Gore the strength he needs in order to face off with and defeat the gods. And what's more, Gore doesn't just use the all-black as a weapon, but he also bonds with it, becoming one with the symbiote and essentially through it gaining a sense of immortality for as long as a small piece of the all-black remains. Gore's consciousness too kind of lives on within it, meaning that from the all-black he can live on and essentially reform in a way. Number 7, Null the King in Black, and also known as the God of Symbiotes. Gore and Null kind of have a history, albeit a quite brief history. In case you were wondering where the all-black came from as a symbiote, it did come from Null himself. Null had set out on a mission to destroy all those that represented light in the universe, seeking to destroy in essence all of the good gods. He created his firstborn, the all-black, which was a powerful weapon that he used in battle to carry out his mission. However, he ended up falling during this time. As Null lay temporarily defeated, Gore came upon him and took the all-black for himself. The golden god that Null fought begged Gore for help, which Gore ignored as he felt he'd been ignored, instead choosing to kill the god in response. He probably thought the dark god Null was also dead as well, but of course we know that Null didn't die there and instead lived on for a long time thereafter. Number 6, an ancient evil. Not only does Gore have the all-black, which is considered to be an ancient embodiment of evil itself, but he too is also an ancient villain. Gore might be newer when it comes to Marvel Comics history, but within the lore of the world, he has been alive for thousands of years and spent millennia hunting down and murdering gods, which means at this point he's pretty much an expert when it comes to his capabilities and his skill set. That will also likely be Gore's story previous to when we meet him in the MCU, meaning he'll be a devastating foe for both Thor Odinson and Jane Foster's mighty Thor to go up against. Number 5, a familiar foe. It should also be noted that because Gore the God Butcher has been around for so long, he isn't just some random villain that Thor comes across. Despite him not making his first comic book appearance until 2012, he and Thor go way back when it comes to their history with one another. In fact, when Thor first comes across the dead gods in issue number 1 of Thor God of Thunder, he doesn't ponder on who is behind it. He actually recognizes Gore's handiwork and suspects him first and foremost. So despite the fact that he didn't exist in comics until 2012, when it comes to his backstory, the God of Thunder and Gore still have had a history. In fact, historically, the first version of Thor that Gore was familiar with was one from way back around 800 AD, a much younger Thor than the present day version that we're familiar with in the main continuity currently. Hence why we follow this version of Thor along with a present and a future version of the character, with their stories interwoven between each other in the Thor God of Thunder series, because, you know, we gotta explain the story of Gore. Despite the year of release being 2012 onward, Gore was also being retconned into Thor's history in this narrative. So it is possible in the film Love and Thunder, Thor will also be familiar with Gore, and the two may already have had a history in the MCU that simply hasn't been touched on yet. Number 4, the Butcher in God Butcher. While there are times that you might feel sympathetic towards Gore, especially considering his tragic origins, and at times his desire to kind of bring people together by killing gods and dismantling beliefs that may otherwise separate them, he is still very much a dark and murderous figure. He doesn't just kill gods, he straight up does butcher them, hence his title. He earned that title. For Gore, he doesn't just want the gods gone, he wants them to feel pain similar to what he himself suffered, and he genuinely seems to enjoy tormenting and toying with gods because of this. You won't just see him make quick work of many gods he comes across, and if he does happen to make quick work of an enemy, it's still likely going to be brutal and bloody, which is what Gore is pretty much known for in the comics. Number 3, cruelty. The other crazy thing about Gore is just how cruel he can be. You would think after all he's lived through, he might be inclined to, you know, show like a modicum of mercy to those he has captured and not yet killed. After all, that's likely what a younger Gore would have hoped for, mercy and kindness from his own gods. And yet Gore was made hard instead by his experience, turning him somewhat into a hypocrite. Despite the fact that he cursed the injustice and cruelty of his gods, gods, this is what he gives back to all those he comes across that oppose him, blinded by his pain and his rage. When Gorr captures Volstagg and makes him work for hundreds of years in his mines without feeding him anything, Gorr whips the god after he stole a loaf of bread. Volstagg reveals that he was starving, admitting that after hundreds of years, even a god needs to eat some amount of food and must give in to hunger. But Gorr only sees this as theft and greed. That is how blinded by rage he has become at this point, and that is how heartless Gorr is. He has no sympathy for any god, and like, no matter the circumstance. He's like, are you a god? I don't care. I'm gonna treat you terribly. That's it. And then you're gonna die brutally. Number 2, Gorr the God. Speaking of the cruelty that Gorr showed Volstagg, his mistreatment of the Asgardian only got worse once Volstagg pointed out that even if Gorr managed to wipe out all of the gods, as impossible as that would be, he would never truly finish his mission. Why? Because Gorr himself had become an immortal god. He raised worlds, killed and did as he pleased, made others serve him, and in a way, kind of made others worship him. He was indestructible, undefeatable, and inevitable, all adjectives that you associate with godlike beings. According to Volstagg, Gorr had become the very thing that he claimed he hated. Needless to say, this was not a reflection that Gorr chose to subscribe to, and he was not very pleased that Volstagg had implied this about him. Still, I think Volstagg definitely was making sense with this observation, which is probably why it made Gorr so angry, because deep down, he knew that it was at least partially true. Number 1, Agar. Agar was the last member of Gorr's family to die before he found the Necro Sword and became a killer of gods. After the death of his mother when he was only a child, the death of his pregnant wife later in life, and all of their other children, his son Agar was the only one left. When Agar died of starvation, that was the final straw for Gorr, who lost all faith in the gods completely. As a result of his guilt, his pain, and his inability to accept the loss of Agar, Gorr created an alternate version of his son, instinctively using the All Black to do so. This construct, it turns out, also represented the hatred that Gorr felt towards what he had become. Yeah, he pretty much knew he'd become a god, he was just in denial. Ultimately, this construct of Agar therefore teamed up with Thor to help him in defeating his father, Gorr, in the end revealing that he was truly no more than the symbiotic weapon that Gorr had carried with him for years as Agar faded away. Number 10, Court of Owls. The Court of Owls is a villainous and powerful group who seek to exert and wield political influence in order to shape the world as they choose. They are enemies of Batman and often use their group of highly skilled assassins known as Talons to eliminate those who stand in their way. These assassins are also immortal to an extent, as they are often imbued with a metallic alloy known as Electrum, which has astounding healing properties and can even reanimate and resurrect dead tissue. The Court of Owls was created by Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder, first appearing as adversaries to Bruce Wayne in the 2011 Batman series in issue number 2. Number 9, Granny Goodness. Her name might not make her sound terrifying, but Granny Goodness is not as sweet as her name makes her out to be. She became a trainer of Darkseid's soldiers after impressing him when she herself was selected to train and become one of his elite hounds. Fans of Kingsman may find the story of how she was trained very familiar. During her training regimen, she was given a dog to train herself, who stayed with her and progressed alongside her. After bonding with the animal, whom she named Mercy, she was later instructed to kill it. Goodness refused and instead killed her trainer. When Darkseid asked her why she had done this, she revealed that Mercy was worth more than her trainer had been to Darkseid, as Goodness had trained the dog to not only be loyal to her, but to Darkseid above her. Darkseid tested the theory by ordering Mercy to kill Goodness and was impressed when he found the dog actually obeyed. Goodness of course was forced to kill Mercy, but this act would inspire Darkseid to shape and use Granny Goodness as his most reliable trainer and recruiter of soldiers, with Goodness being responsible for brainwashing those she trained and becoming the most loyal and fearless members of Darkseid's army. Number 8, Black Flash. In the comics, Black Flash acts as a symbol of death, and also sometimes as literal death for the speedsters. You see, the former Flashes and past speedsters have all been too fast for regular death to touch them, and so it seems instead they have their own version. Enter the Black Flash. The Black Flash draws power from the Speed Force like many of the other speedsters we've seen. This being is able to freeze time, but only for those who do not possess potent super speed powers. It resembles death in appearance, looking like a corpse of a zombified version of the Flash. While Black Flash has appeared in the Arrowverse, this Speed Force entity has yet to appear in the DCEU. Number 7. Mandrak the Dark Monitor. Mandrak is a pretty confusing entity, but also a fairly scary one. Mandrak was once, or is, depending on what you believe, Dax Novu. And Dax Novu was once part of the Monitor. Following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, the injuries the Monitor had suffered caused it to splinter somewhat, dividing its body and creating other, smaller monitors. Dax Novu was one of these monitors. He eventually realized that the monitors were parasitic beings who were feeding on the energies of the multiverse, slowly consuming and destroying it. He informed the other monitors of this, but was shunned for attempting to share his realization. Dax then became corrupted, turning into a dark monitor known as Mandrak. While we might eventually see the Monitor and Anti-Monitor make their way into the DCEU films, it's unlikely we'll see this dark monitor pop up anytime soon.
Number 6. 7 Deadly Sins. Referred to as the 7 deadly enemies of man in the Golden Age of comics, the 7 deadly sins are villainous representations of the sins outlined in Christianity, with slight name changes to fit the younger audience, being pride, envy, greed, hatred, laziness, selfishness, and injustice. However, most modern appearances of these villains use their actual original names. Trapped in cartoon-like statues by the wizard Shazam, the 7 deadly sins have escaped their stone prisons many times thanks to the help of the other villains. However, they always seem to end up back as statues. When Spectre destroyed the Rock of Eternity and killed Shazam, the sins were released and wreaked havoc on the world until the Rock was rebuilt and they were captured and imprisoned once more. However, not all was back to normal, as Shazam was still able to hear them in his thoughts and they tortured him in his head. Pride, being the most powerful and dangerous of all the enemies, represents the desire of one to be more important and attractive than others. Envy represents one's jealousy over others and a desire to deprive a man from something he loves. Greed represents insatiable ambition and the desire to possess more than one needs. Anger represents uncontrollable feelings of hatred and violence. Sloth represents laziness and apathy. Gluttony represents overindulgence and overconsumption of anything to the point of waste. And of course, lust represents excessive desires or thoughts of sexual nature. Number 5. Lady Blaze. Having worked behind the scenes for a very long time, this red-skinned demoness is not one that you should take lightly. Disguising herself as Angelica Blaze, the Metropolis nightclub owner, Blaze later appeared in Fawcett City, where she took a new mortal guise as a mob boss. Her plans for the city and the Rock of Eternity connected to it were, however, quickly foiled by Shazam and the Marvel family. Interestingly enough, she's actually the one who corrupted Black Adam and led him down the path that you see him on now. With her arsenal of demonic abilities, we've seen Lady Blaze go toe-to-toe many times with the members of the Captain Marvel family and other DC heroes such as Batman. Check out this truly twisted demoness for yourself in her first appearance in 1990's Action Comics number 655. Number 4. Sabak. Known as Timothy Carnes, he was granted powers by the demonic forces of hell in order to challenge Shazam and become his dark opposite. Drawing his powers from Satan, Aim, Belial, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, and Kratos, Carnes just needs to say the magic word Sabak and he transforms into a hulking demon with super speed, strength, fire breath, and pyrokinesis. Sabak battles Shazam multiple times throughout his career, always on even footing with his rival right up to the point where, he's eventually defeated each time. The demon who granted him powers, they eventually get really fed up with his failures and strip him of all his powers one by one, letting Carnes be defeated for good. A new, more feral version of Sabak has appeared in the modern age with the alter ego of Ishmael Gregor. Check him out in his first appearance in 1943's Captain Marvel Jr. number 4, or if you're interested in his new adaptation, check out 2004's Outsiders Volume 3 number 8. Number 3. Mr. Mind. Now, mentioned briefly at the beginning of this list, Mr. Mind is a tiny alien worm from the planet Venus with an extremely high intelligence and is one of Shazam's arch enemies. He's notably the first villain to bring together other villains who had been defeated previously, uniting them into the Monster Society of Evil. Mr. Mind's strength lies in his intelligence, able to use the assembled supervillains to run Shazam ragged and nearly defeat him on multiple occasions. Mr. Mind can use mind control to force others into working for him, along with, some other generally ominous assertions of psychic powers. His most significant role was as the primary villain of 52, in which he was revealed to be behind all the events of the series in a dastardly bid to literally eat time itself. Having first appeared in Captain Marvel Adventures number 26 all the way back in 1943, this worm has caused some serious damage in the DC universe. Number 2. Dr. Savannah. Considered to be Shazam's golden age nemesis and a primary arch foe to this day, Thaddeus Bodog Savannah Sr. was one of the richest men in Fawcett City, and used his intellect and resources to try and defeat Shazam. He deduced Shazam's identity early on in his career, giving him a very unique relationship to the hero as he could strike him at any time. Savannah was a genius mad scientist who operated from the planet Venus with his own family of children, and in exile, he turned against the world and plots for world domination. Of course, he's frequently stopped by Shazam, confounding him to no end. In the modern era, Savannah was reinvented as a scientist who became corrupted by dark magic, turning him to a madman with the body of a withered old man. As the leader of the Monster Society of Evil, Savannah has been part of many of Shazam's greatest battles, so why not read his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in Wiz Comics number 2. And number 1, Black Adam. An obvious choice for the number 1 spot on this list because there's nowhere else this dastardly villain deserves to be. The first man to be given the powers of Shazam, Black Adam went mad with power and was stripped of his abilities, lying dormant until the modern day, during which his ancestor was granted his powers. Black Adam possesses powers drawn from the Egyptian gods as opposed to, Shazam's powers. Black Adam eventually somewhat reforms, dismissing his prior evil as corruption, and takes over a city-state in Egypt, and then marries a woman named Isis. But his new family is eventually killed, and Black Adam swears vengeance on the world, which leads to a battle with Shazam once again in a war that spans the globe before being stripped of all his powers again, after Shazam forcibly changes the magic word that grants him his abilities. Portrayed by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the live-action movies, I cannot wait to see what the DC Universe does with this character in the future.
Number 10, Man-Bat. The Man-Bat is not always a villain of Batman's. He has been known to sometimes be an ally as well. But when Dr. Kirk Langstrom is in his Man-Bat form, he is always horrifying. So horrifying that the closest thing we got to him was in one of Batman's nightmares from Batman v Superman in the DCEU. However, this wasn't really specified to be Man-Bat specifically. Dr. Langstrom aimed to create a serum to help the deaf and blind, but accidentally made a serum that also transformed anyone who used it into a giant bat-like creature. Both he and his wife suffer from its effects at one point, becoming the Man-Bat and She-Bat respectively. It would be cool to see a horror-style Batman film featuring these two monstrous and sometimes villainous characters. Number 9, Solomon Grundy. While he's appeared in lots of animated films, Solomon Grundy has yet to make his debut in the live-action world of the DCEU. This could be because of his monstrous appearance. Solomon Grundy is a zombie-like villain who sometimes ends up as a hero depending on the circumstances. He has a Frankenstein-type vibe to him as well, which likely makes him too monster-like for the likes of the DCEU. Although there are so many horror-inspired characters and villains in DC Comics that would be cool to see if that genre made its way more into the films. Horror DC, I would watch those movies. Number 8, Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange has a place in the television series Gotham, where he is played by B.D. Wong, and is depicted as the chief of psychiatry at Arkham Asylum. But we have yet to see the insane mad scientist make an appearance in the DC Extended Universe. Because he is often closely tied these days to Arkham Asylum both in the comics and in the Batman video games, it would be kind of hard to introduce this madman who has a tendency to experiment on patients and transform them into monsters into the DCEU without first introducing the famed Asylum. Hugo is a formidable and frightening Batman foe, not just because of how insane he is, but because of how brilliant he is too.
It's a perfect plan. With this machine, I can imagine Batman to be anyone I choose. And these fools will pay a fortune for it.
He was even able to use his smarts and deductive reasoning to uncover Batman's true identity. Number 7, Mr. Mixie Pizyelik. So, Mr. Mixie might not be horrifying to look at. He's kinda silly looking, truth be told, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared of him. He has more power than you can possibly imagine, and in fact, anything that he can imagine can come to pass, should he will it. The only limit to his reality-altering powers are the limitations of his own imagination. Like Batman's Joker, he has at times claimed to be the ultimate Superman foe. In one story to prove this, he even killed all of Superman's enemies and allies just to prove how evil he was. Mr. Mixie also forced Superman to kill him as well, forcing Superman to break his own moral code. Ooh. Talk about being on Joker's terrifying level of ultimate villainy.
Oh, I don't feel so good, but it's still worth it.
Number 6, Anti-Monitor. Speaking of monitors, we should also quickly touch on another scary and powerful one, sort of the scary and powerful one, the Anti-Monitor. Anti-Monitor is a supremely powerful villain who threatened the very existence of the multiverse during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He controlled the antimatter universe, and is hell-bent on ensuring the destruction of all things. So much so that even after Anti-Monitor is defeated, Nekron ended up trapping the Anti-Monitor's body, and as it was later revealed in Blackest Night, using it as a source of power for the Black Central Power Battery. While we might get a sort of Crisis-inspired storyline in the DCEU with all different alternate universes and timelines from DC in television and film being acknowledged, it's more likely that they'll go the Flashpoint route as opposed to the Crisis on Infinite Earths route. Number 5. Dr. Death. The most recent incarnation of Dr. Death from Prime Earth was only around for 5 issues, so it's not just his horrific story and appearance that will likely bar him from appearing in the DCEU. It's also just that he isn't really one of the main villains. He doesn't have as much clout. However, in the few issues we did see him in, he proved to be a terrifying villain and foe. Dr. Carl Helfern was a brilliant scientist working for Wayne Enterprises on a serum that would strengthen bones, causing them to become more durable instead of breaking when under stress. However, his failed attempts combined with other mental trauma and strain caused him to go insane. He killed his scientific team, injecting them with a failed version of the serum that caused their bones to grow until they were ripped apart. Number 4. The Corinthian. The Corinthian isn't specifically from DC directly itself, but is from an imprint of theirs that used to be known as Vertigo. Well, it's still known as Vertigo, but it no longer exists. It was discontinued, and instead we got Black Label, which is also an amazing line, but everyone was obviously still sad to see Vertigo go. One of Vertigo's most famous series was Sandman, which also featured some of DC's characters who made cameos throughout. The Corinthian, however, was not one of these, but is a character unique to the world of Sandman. While we are getting a Netflix series for Sandman in 2021, I also think it would be super cool to get some darker toned DC films. Among them, it would be cool to get some Sandman or at least a Sandman film. Although the Corinthian might be too monstrous to actually make an appearance, even if we did get a Sandman film. He is one of the nightmares that Dream made. At one point, he escapes the dreaming and ventures out in the world, where he becomes a serial killer who pulls out and eats his victims' eyes. He himself has mouths where his eyes should be and usually wears sunglasses to disguise his monstrous appearance. Ugh, eating eyes. It allows him to see everything that you've seen, which is, gross still. No, it's still gross. Number 3. Dr. Destiny. Speaking of Sandman, I want to talk in particular about another horrific villain who appeared there, although this one also exists as a horror and supervillain within the direct DC Comics universe as well. There he wielded a device he'd invented called the Materiopticon. This device was later retconned to be Morpheus's Dreamstone, which his mother gave him, when Dr. D appeared in Sandman. Dr. Destiny was hypnotized by the Justice League to prevent him from dreaming and becoming too powerful. As a result, he was driven insane and ended up in Arkham Asylum, wasting away, becoming a skeletal version of himself. When he escaped, he wreaked havoc at an all-night 24 hours diner where he tortured the patrons and staff before Dream finally caught up with him. Thank goodness, cause that issue, woo, it's crazy. Number 2. Professor Pig. Professor Pig's real name is Laszlo Valentin. He is a former Spiral agent who went insane and became obsessed with curing people of their individualism in order to perfect them. When the crime syndicate temporarily took over Earth, Gotham City was overtaken by the criminals who ruled in Batman's absence. Pig himself used the hospital as his own HQ and worked from there, kidnapping civilians, sedating them, and transforming them with strange, cosmetic, and mutilating procedures, using involuntary patients to create his own horrific Dollatron army. He was created by Grant Morrison and Andy Kubert, and also first appeared in 2011's Batman series. Number 1. Jane Doe. Jane Doe is a serial killer who served time at Arkham Asylum. She appears to not have any skin of her own, appearing to be covered in exposed muscle tissue. Instead, she covets the skin and lives of others. While she doesn't appear to have any specific superpowers, it has been implied that she might be possible of shapeshifting. She often gets to know her victims before killing them and adopting their identities, sometimes even wearing their preserved skin as a suit, instead of simply using makeup to disguise herself. For example, I could be Jane Doe right now and you wouldn't even know. That's how good she is at it. Oh my goodness.
Number 10. Monster Society of Evil. The very first supervillain team to appear in the comics all the way back in 1943's Captain Marvel Adventures number 22. Many of these villains mentioned will be talked about later in a lot more detail, but I thought this team was worth mentioning as a whole first. When Mr. Mind first came to Earth 2, he organized his first team of evildoers, including Mr. Who, Neola, Ramulus, and the Dummy. However, this was just one iteration of the team, as it was later revised in the Earth S universe to include beings from other worlds such as Goatman, who had been his first minion, Evil Eye, a hypnotic monster, and the Crocodile Men of the planet Punkus. The most villainous combination of this team though is when Mr. Mind enlisted the help of Mr. Atom, King Kull, Ogar, and Black Adam to plan an all-out attack on the Rock of Eternity alongside the inhabitants of 247 worlds who were being forced to work for them. Number 9. Ivac. Originally a small-town crook, Stanley Stinky Printwhistle made a deal with Lucifer after he was caught in a bridge explosion. In exchange for his soul, he was granted the power to become a champion of evil through the magical word Ivac, turning him from a frail criminal into a muscled supervillain. Contrary to Shazam, Ivac is empowered by 4 of the most evil and terrifying men to have ever walked the earth. Ivan the Terrible, who supplies terror, Cesare Bourgeois, who gives Ivac cunning, Attila the Hun, who gives him fierceness, and Caligula, the sponsor of cruelty. With his powers, Ivac was faced off against Shazam many times, most commonly as a member of the Monster Society of Evil. Although he has reformed many times over the course of his comics, Ivac is still a staple character in the Shazam universe and will forever be an annoying thorn in his side.
And at 8, Suicide Squad. The Joker is an infamously extreme and formidable psychopathic crime lord in Gotham City in this movie, being at the very top of the city's criminal underworld, greatly feared by all those other crime bosses and criminals. Though he is devoid of empathy or pity for anybody taking part in his wicked schemes, either by intimidation or fraud, the Joker used to adore his on-again, off-again girlfriend and partner in crime Harley Quinn, doing his utmost to rescue her from Task Force X and the clutches of Amanda Waller, with eventual success. I mean, like, he was in the movie for like 5 minutes total, but like, it's better than nothing, right? For unknown reasons though, he later broke up with Harley, leaving her on her own and the target of many of his enemies. This version from the DCEU was certainly a darker and more brutal Joker than what we've been seeing in the comics now, not relying on Batman and being more willing to kill like he was in the golden age of comics, much along the lines of the 3 Joker revelation from the Mobius chair, since this version also killed Robin in the DCEU prior to the events of the movie. However, some also believe that the Joker is a mentally unstable version of Robin, which could be revealed to be true, but I don't know if they're actually going to reveal it and just let it be a theory. And yes, I was doing this to show the mask multiple times. And at 7, Emperor Joker. Emperor Joker was the form the Joker took after tricking Mr. Mxyzptlk into donating 99.99% of his powers to the Joker. He gave him 99.99% of his powers accidentally. As a direct result, he became near omnipotent and created a hellish world in his own image. At some point, the imp from the 5th dimension, Mr. Mxyzptlk, attempted to see what a member of the regular realm would do with his power and selected the Joker. He intended on only donating 1% of his power to the Joker, but the Mad Clown tricked him into revealing his true name and thus ended up gaining 99.99% of the powers, and proceeded to transform existence within 69 seconds. Nice. Into a realm made in his own image, which was a twisted caricature, and with everyone stuck in a loop. Emperor Joker continually tortured and killed Batman every single day, only to bring him back to life and do it all over again. As could be expected, Emperor Joker took pride in these particular killings due to the unique relationship the 2 characters continued to share. Although this relationship is also the Joker's undoing, since he was still defined by being the Batman's antagonist, and he was beaten by a dog of all things. Okay, well, it was Superman as a dog, but still. Joker with near absolute power? No thanks. And at 6, Batman Two-Faces. Batman Two-Faces is the DC equivalent to the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, where ironically, Harvey Dent, also known as Two-Face, isn't the one with the Hyde affliction, but rather Batman himself is. It's the year 1886. Bruce Wayne is organizing a gala to exhibit the Twilight Orchid, a rare flower with unique characteristics. During the day, the flower is exquisitely colored and perfumed and attracts a large amount of insects. At night, however, it turns into a weed, attracting only pests. I know a few people like that. Miss Pamela Isley, Bruce Wayne, Commissioner Gordon, and many of Gotham's finest attend the gala where Two-Face storms in and steals the flower. Bruce reveals that he had hoped to actually create a potion derived from the flower, which was retrieved from Miss Isley's dead hands. A potion which would cure Two-Face from his dual personality. Finalizing the potion, Bruce tests it on himself. He suddenly develops superhuman strength, agility, and a new sense of courage and purpose. He puts together a costume and sets off to battle crime on Two-Face's terms. However, this potion didn't only give him powers, it gave him another personality. The personality of the Joker. Yeah, that's right. In Batman Two-Faces, Bruce Wayne is the Joker, which is pretty frightening for sure. Halfway through into number 5, Batman Bloodstorm. At one point, Gotham City was attacked by a group of vampires led by Dracula. However, the vampires were defeated by Batman, who would become part vampire in the struggle. The Joker later lured the surviving vampires out of their underground lair and convinced them to allow him to be their new leader. The vampires accepted, and the Joker appointed a vampire named Creech to be his second in command. The Joker and his new gang then set out to conquer Gotham's underworld. Their first target was Cardona. The vampires ambushed Cardona and his thugs at their hideout, drank their blood, and transformed them into Night Stalkers like themselves. But yeah, you heard that right. The Joker of Earth 43 is Batman's archenemy, and a non-vampire leading a pack of vampires through fear. The ability to lead a group of vampires through fear is absolutely nuts, because like in every incarnation, vampires aren't really afraid of anything, aside from maybe other vampires or like steaks. Like nice medium steaks. That was a bad joke. You know what I mean, right? Like this is, how crazy is this version of the Joker to try to do that? I don't know. Like holy damn, or I guess unholy damn. Let's go on. And at 4, Dark Knight Returns. Like most incarnations, this Joker is a psychopathic mass murderer who is Batman's archenemy. Following Batman's retirement though, he gets confined to Arkham Asylum and falls into a catatonic state. But when Batman returns 10 years later, he comes back as well for a final showdown with the Dark Knight. It's unknown how he knows that he's back, but he just wakes up. The final showdown between the two ends in the Tunnel of Love, in which Joker hysterically stabs Batman in the stomach several times. But mid-stab, Batman instinctively breaks the Joker's neck just enough to paralyze him, but not kill him. Joker encourages Batman to finish him off, but Batman won't do it. So the Joker then finally says, "See you in hell," before, in a last act of revenge against his enemy, twists his own neck just far enough to kill himself, and framing his enemy for his own murder. Isn't that wonderful? That's freaking nuts. Who snaps their own neck to frame a guy? Okay? This is one of the freakiest scenes in all of comics. Like, what the living hell? And at 3, A Serious House. In the world of Arkham Asylum, a serious house on a serious Earth, the inmates of Arkham Asylum have taken over and seized control of the staff. They're willing to release the hostages, but only if their one demand is met. Batman must be turned over to them and become one of their own. Commissioner Gordon informs Batman that the patients of Arkham Asylum have taken over the building and will kill the staff unless Batman agrees to meet with them, and the patients are of course led by the Joker, who kills a guard to spur Batman to obey his wishes. Two-Face meanwhile has degenerated even further into madness, and Batman is forced into a game of hide and seek and told he has 1 hour to make his way through the maze-like corridors of Arkham and find a way out before his old foes are sent after him. Yep, that's... yeah. The fact that Joker is just leading a whole gang of prisoners who have taken over Arkham is absolutely insane, and then the art style of this comic makes it one of the freakiest depictions of the Joker to date. Like, you've been seeing it, it's nuts. Penultimately, in at number 2, The Batman Who Laughs. The story of Batman of Earth 22 was not much different from that of any other version of the Caped Crusader. When he was a boy, Bruce Wayne watched his parents get murdered in an alley, vowing vengeance against crime. So he trained for years and became the hero Batman, fighting supervillains in Gotham City. Everything went sideways though when Joker started a killing spree across Gotham. The clown had discovered that he was dying from the same chemicals that had turned him into what he was, and wanted to make everyone die with him. He killed all of Batman's enemies, including the Penguin, Catwoman, Killer Croc, the Ventriloquist, a lot. Joker also killed Commissioner Gordon, who accidentally sprung an acid trap on his notebook and it melted his face off. After bombing a hospital and recreating the scene of Bruce's parents killing in front of him multiple times, Batman lost control and broke the Joker's neck. Unbeknownst to Batman though, the Joker exhaled a toxin contained in his heart, which infected anyone close to him if he died. In this case, it was Batman. This caused him to snap and basically become the new Joker, taking over Earth 32 and later on, gaining cosmic power. Yeah, cosmic power. Joker. But also Batman. No thanks. And finally, in at number 1, Death of the Family. When the Joker became obsessed over destroying the Bat family, he decided to arrange for his face to be surgically removed. According to the Joker, he did this to symbolize that even without his mask, he was still the Joker, whereas Batman, Robin, and Batgirl's identities were only mask deep. To see this through, Joker arranged for the serial killer known as the Dollmaker to remove his face surgically in Arkham Asylum. The Dollmaker sent his, son to do the procedure though, only for the Joker to kill him by tearing out his throat with his teeth. Dollmaker later went on to actually remove his face, since Joker refused to do it any other way, but the two actually arranged to celebrate his rebirth before leaving the clown's face on the cell wall for Batman to find. Joker would later use straps, clips, and pins to retrofit the flesh back onto his face in a form of mask. which he wore over his now exposed tendons, hiding the way he looked, because honestly that might have been a little too much. Joker would also remain in this mask for the remainder of his plan to destroy the Bat family, a mission which ended in a dinner party in the Batcave. And I think it's fairly obvious why this is number 1. Even without cosmic power, a man getting his face removed only to turn it into a mask to wear it again? No thank you. Not to mention that this is also the face that Joker's daughter ends up wearing, I'm pretty sure. So, no.